o'clock, and I am calling this special session for the budget hearings to order. Melvina, would you please bless us with an invocation this morning?
Edora galandi hei ko salane o jiliheli dandes gatin ho. Ni una det dosta heldi do hest ahando gilastane ha. Ni osi gielan ha ke hest negat. Ni ho deske yoni do hest nola deskiat ni do hest. Nola di danto ni dehita. Ni ho dek deskia iske yoni do hest do you dange ha. Ostwatli lohi ajalegi skadu. Father, we just thank you for this day, for bringing us together again to do the budget for our people. Lord, we just ask that you be with each and every one. Lord, that we be mindful, Lord, that not what we do with our own understanding, but the knowledge that you give us each day. Lord, that we would have compassion for our people and one another. Lord, we just ask all these things in your name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Shirley, would you please conduct a roll call?
Yes, sir. Keith Austin.
Here.
Joshua Sam. Here. Danny Callison. Here. Julia Coates. Sean Crittenden. Joe Deere. Mike Dobbins. Here. Rex Jordan. Here. Johnny Kidwell. Here. Darrell Legg. Here. Wes Nofire. Here. Dora Petskowski. Here. Mike Shambaugh. Here. Melvina Shotpout. Honey. E.O. Smith. Here. Condessa Teehee. Honey. Victoria Vasquez. Honey. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Councilor Coates, I'm not sure if you heard that or not yet. And we have, throughout the day, I understand the presentation will keep us from seeing Councilor Coates at times. So sure appreciate Councilor Coates if you would speak loudly and interrupt if you need to speak, because we can't see you. So it's much of the time. So please forgive us if we have a hard time noticing you, but we'll do our darndest. Mr. Speaker, would you please introduce today's business?
Yes, sir. Budget hearings, FY 2023 capital and comprehensive operating budgets, and I move for that approval.
Thank you. You know, today the task that we take is the single most important thing we will do all year we're doing in this room today. And it is a great honor to be able to do what we do. We just came off of the holiday weekend, and we saw the fact is we've all played hard all weekend long. And today we get back to work at doing the work of the Cherokee people. This is how we fund our government. It happens today. And our people rely on the work that we do today to make sure that our departments and our employees have the resources they need in order to do the work that they're tasked with. So I appreciate everybody here taking this very serious. I appreciate all the employees who put so much work into this, but I will tell you, I really appreciate our Treasurer's office and Jody and his efforts to make sure that we have the information we need to do our work today. Thank you all. We're going to start. We're going to be fast-paced today. We're going to take the time that we need, but we are going to be fast-paced. We're going to start with the Office of the Chief, and who is representing them today?
Councilor Austin, could I do an overall presentation of the budget before we start with the individuals?
I would love that.
Okay. And also, Councilor Coates, I have got somebody sending you a digital version of the presentation. You should have that via email shortly. You went blind last year, didn't have it, so I've got somebody working on that. Good morning, Mr. Chair, Mr. Speaker, and Tribal Council. I'm Janice Taylor, the Treasurer here at Cherokee Nation. It's an honor to be here today to present the FY23 budget. We'll do a high-level presentation of the overall budget because there's some very interesting things. We're doing such a great work for the Cherokee people, and I want to highlight it for you before we get down into the details of each budget. We'll walk through the updates from last year and then also the budget preparation process. We do this about every 4 years. I don't think a lot of people realize how big a task it is to prepare this budget, and so we're going to go through the timeline on that. And we'll go over the revenue assumptions, the discretionary funds, and some employment figures. FY23's budget consists of 25 departments. They include tribal government, service departments, resource departments, and boards and commissions. The numbers assigned to the departments correspond with the tabs in your budget books. You will notice that the numbers are not consecutive. There are a few numbers we no longer have departments for. Those are 16, 21, 22, and 26. As we go through the budget presentation, there are a couple of matters I want to call your attention to that you should keep in mind. There is a new group at Cherokee Nation. Group 29 is public health. That has been created to ease some of the burden on the preventative and healthy lifestyle programs that we have here at Cherokee Nation. And we've taken them out of health and put them in their own department. You'll be hearing more about that department later in the budget hearings. Also, the American Rescue Plan Act funding, also referred to as ARPA, is done in the Financial Resources Department. So it's accounted for at the project level. The departments that administer those programs do all of the work and actually help the citizens, but because Treasury is very restrictive with that funding, Finance oversees every step of the way to be sure that we are in compliance. There's $1 billion worth of American Rescue Plan funds in this budget, and that's what was carried over unspent from last year. So we haven't worked our way through all of that. And then the CARES Act, the last thing that's noted there, there's no CARES Act funding in this budget because those funds expired and had to be expended. So nothing was carried over. Okay, then we always have our matters of compliance. Cash reserves are budgeted at $42.9 million. Emergency reserve fund is budgeted at $3.4 million. Motor fuels tax scholarships are budgeted at $15.1, and the cash match for grants is budgeted at $2.7 million. This is where I'm going to go through the process that's involved in arriving at the chief's proposed budget. It's an intensive process. This is the overall timeline. I'll go through each step that we go through. The planning process began in early April 22. The Budgets Office sent an email to the departments on April 22nd requesting them to prepare their 23 budgets. Departments were given the direction to prepare a flat budget consistent with FY22. Indirect cost and overhead rates. Indirect cost rate is 11.7% versus 11.52% in FY22, and the fringe rate is 33.3% versus 32.4% last year. Slight increases in both of those. The programs had 5 weeks to prepare their budgets, and they were due back to the Budgets Department by May 27th. I want to pause here just a minute and note that the Financial Resources Budget Department has 5 people in there, and I've got Loretta Keener and Daniel Stroop lead that department, but Cherokee Nation has over 500 budgets. So if you can get in your mind how much work that is, they do a phenomenal job. So as the departments prepared their budgets, we asked them to provide detailed descriptions of each program, what their outcomes were, how we would measure if the program was successful. And then we asked them to tell us who's eligible for the program, what their service area is, and how many participants they intend to serve. They detail cost-saving measures and significant changes in staffing patterns. They're also requested to provide information on external funding or grants that they have researched or received. Finally, we ask for information on the external entities that the programs work with. Detailed narratives for each program can be found in your budget books. So then they return their budgets back to the Financial Resources Budget Review Group, and the review starts and goes all through June and into July. We ensure that the programs were funded based on the priority of their services. We want to be sure that we're putting our money where it's going to best help our citizens. Then they are evaluated to see, are they utilizing grant dollars in addition to the tribal funds that we have, and also their willingness to look for other funding sources rather than Gen Fund. We also look to see if they had any correspondence with federal funding agencies and whether any changes need to be made to their federally funding programs. Then we ask the questions, is this one-time funding? Is it recurring funding? What is the current and past usage of the funding? Were there any auditor findings or concerns? And how can we apply best practice accounting? Finally, we ask for the rationale behind any budget increases that they may request. So after the financial review is done and the budgets are all balanced, it goes to administration for their approval. They look over it, and once they complete their review, final adjustments and compilations are made. And then the budget was submitted to Tribal Council on July 29th. We're required by the Cherokee Nation Constitution to have that to Tribal Council by the 31st of July. So that concludes the budget preparation process. This is the largest budget ever presented to the council. It consists of operating budgets of $2.9809 million operating budget, and the capital budget is $569.3 million. So it's $3.5 billion total in the budget. Now let's look at the revenue assumptions with the proposed comprehensive budget. So on the left is the pie chart, and it breaks out our 4 areas of funding. We have tribal funds, Cherokee Nation tax, other funding, which includes state and private entities, and federal funds. And it's no surprise that federal funds are the largest source of funding that we have. On the right, we have broken out all of the 70+% in federal funds that we get by the agencies in the federal government. The highest funding source is from the Department of Treasury, and that is mainly as a result of the American Rescue Plan funding. I may refer to that as FRF or Fiscal Recovery Fund throughout this presentation. That is 39% of our FY23 budget. Next is IHS with 32.1%. Okay, this is the table of grants, compacts, and tribal revenues. The grants and compact revenues represented by the green line, and there is a decrease of $158.4 million there, mainly due to the spend down of the ARPA funds. There's $47.4 million in IHS ARPA-related funding, but that amount has been offset by $191.2 million increase in the 477 funds. The majority of the 477 funds go into child care, serving various needs of the Cherokee children. There was also a $2.6 million increase in other federal funding for human services programs. The orange line is the tribal funding, and it increased by $305.2 million, mainly due to the $166.6 million capital budget increase related to the many infrastructure and expansion projects ongoing. There's also a 114.5% increase in the reserve funds to comply with tribal council and federal requirements. The IDC pool increased $18.9 million to accommodate our expansion efforts, and the motor vehicle tax increased $2.2 million based on projected revenues. The other $3 million increase is within multiple clinical support and public health programs that we provide to keep our citizens safe. You'll notice the jump in grant funding in FY20, and that is the CARES funding that we received. In 21, it's a combination of CARES Act and ARPA funding, and the increases in FY22 and 23 are strictly ARPA funding. So here we have the trend analysis for the dividends from component units. There's a budgeted increase in dividend of $4.3 million, decrease, excuse me. And that is, the original Housing Jobs and Sustainable Communities Act was funded with dividend revenue. This year, that is being funded with ARPA funds. And then there was also a one-time capital funding dividend for the Durbin Feeling Center, and we utilized that in FY22 to build that center over there. So those are not budgeted in FY23. You do see the sharp, dramatic increase in FY21, and that was due to the significant increase in federal contracts that CMB earned during that year. So here we have an overview of the budget. The orange line represents the sources, and the green line represents our uses. We have a balanced budget, so every source of income has a corresponding use of that funding. So here's where we show what we're doing with our money. This pie chart shows a breakout of the discretionary funds by their use. It excludes general government expenses, but it shows that we prioritize education at 23.2% and health also at 23.2%. When we got to digging into these numbers, something that stood out was our commitment to using our own funds for public safety. We have the Marshal Service at 16.5% in this budget. In 2019, that was only 4%, so we have significantly increased our commitment. That is largely in response to the Supreme Court cases that have come down. We've been given a lot of responsibility and no funding to go with it. Overall budget for the Marshal Service has increased 297% since FY20. Their budget in FY20 was $17.8 million, and it is $70.8 million in this budget. Okay, we're going to move on to employment figures. Just 2 weeks ago, Cherokee Nation was named as a Forbes Top 10 employer for 22 in Oklahoma. It's the first time Cherokee Nation has been recognized by Forbes as one of Oklahoma's best employers. Here is a 10-year trend analysis in our FTEs. That stands for full-time equivalent. So those are the actual positions that we have here at Cherokee Nation. In the last 10 years, we've increased our workforce by 2,137 FTEs. Now, this table is something that has a lot of information. It is a breakout of our employment by department. The first column shows the existing or full-time equivalents by department. And it's no surprise that health is the largest department with 2,200.1 filled FTEs. Human services is the second largest with 406.8 filled FTEs. The second column are the vacant positions by department. We have a total of 1,120.9 vacancies. The majority of those vacancies are in health with 572.7 vacancies. Third column are new positions. When the departments send their budgets over, they can request new positions. We have a total of 340.3 new full-time equivalents. The majority of those are in health, with 176.1 of those. 136 of those vacant positions in health are direct patient care. So we're trying to ramp up to meet the demand that we have. The Marshal Service has the next largest amount of new positions with 51 requested. Again, the Marshal Service employment has increased 241% since FY20. FY20, they had 59.5 full-time equivalent positions, and this year they have 203. The last column is the total full-time equivalent positions we have, and there are almost 5,700 of those, 5,692.5. Okay, these budgets don't come together by chance. Everybody in the Financial Resources Department works diligently to compile the budgets. I already introduced you to Loretta and Daniel Stroop. Stand up, you guys. They lead the Budgets Department, so I really appreciate them. They've been a great help to me. Jamie Cole is the controller at Cherokee Nation. Most of you all know him. He keeps us rolling, keeps us in compliance, makes sure that everything is where it should be. And then Chrissy Moore always provides she does the presentation. So puts all the numbers together, boils them down into a manner that is easy to understand. So I appreciate you guys, and I know you all do too. So thank you. We will move on with any questions that you might have. I do have one thing that had been brought up in the pre-budget meetings, and it was the positions that were noted in the books as TBD, or to be determined. When we sent out the memo to the departments, we asked them if they were putting in any new positions that they didn't have. HR has certain names for their positions. And we asked them if it was a new position that they weren't for sure what it was going to be called yet, to just put in TBD for that, rather than throw in something that they thought would be close. Because we start with these so far out, that was just kind of a better way to do the placeholders. I'm sure the various departments will be happy to address any of those TBD positions. They probably have a much better idea now what those are actually going to be. So I did want to address that before we went any further. So are there any questions of me?
Thank you, Treasurer. Yes, I see Counselor Callison has a question.
Ms. Taylor, thank you so much. This is really good. I have a couple of questions since I'm new at this. Who sets the budgets in each department? It would be my, and I have several questions. So when they send these budgets to your office, how do they determine what they need or where they need, or who does all this? So
we asked them to start with last year's budget, what they had last year. They're requested to do a flat budget. So if you got $10 for this last year, we asked them to bring it in at $10 again. If they found out that there was a significant need for a particular program, then once they can show, we had $10 for this last year, we thought we were going to serve 10 people, but we actually served 15, so we need $15 for it this year. And so that is what the budget review process is all about, determining where is the best place to put our money going forward.
So who sets these salaries in each one of these budgets at each one of these departments?
Most of the salaries are set by the pay scale in HR. So they put the positions out to market. So they take a particular area for that position, whatever it is, and they put it out to market, and they come back with a salary range, and it's based on your years of employment, your level of education, those type of things.
So if you're a department executive director, who sets those salaries?
That is a good question. Chief of Staff, can you help me a little bit with that?
I believe the question was about executive director salaries.
Yes, from the top, and I know, explained, I guess the top's the one sets the salaries below them. So at what point and who starts and goes to the top with them?
So, again, any new position that's created or any positions out there, sometimes we market them based on the amount of work, the number of employees, the amount of responsibility and such. So we're continuously looking at all positions, but for executive directors especially, we will look at them from an administration standpoint. We'll work with HR to make sure we're in the proper range for those executive directors.
So like health, if you were going to do doctors, they've got a health system all over the world that they set this and number of patients and everything that they do. So is it the chief staff that sets these, or is it a committee that sets these, or is it the treasurer's office, or what?
So if it's just general positions, that would be HR. They have a department where they look at compensation. They have a compensation director. And sometimes it's software that they use, I believe, where there's different positions that are preloaded in there, but also they also pick up the phone, call around and find out, kind of where we're at as far as our current salaries. And if those need to be adjusted, almost always adjusted up, but believe it or not, sometimes they're recommended to adjust down.
Right, right. So is there any way maybe the council, if HR could come and tell us, and they don't have to do anybody's personal, and I don't have any vendettas, I just want to understand how they set those and where they go with them, because I mean, that would be that question.
Well, certainly we can have Samantha explain that a little bit more in detail, but as you guys know, we're in a very competitive job market right now, and so we want to be on the cutting edge of our salaries, so we're constantly looking at what can we do to raise those salaries, to attract and retain the very best employees.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Taylor, the last question, when we open this up on our hard drive, for example, it'll say president or executive director. How do we determine what their final salary is as we go across that line? Have you got something that you could show us, or maybe when we're done, you can show me? Because, it breaks it down as an hourly deal, then it goes into projected, then it goes into fringe, and it goes into this, but it never gives us an exact what this person's making to do this job.
And some of them are paid on more than one AU, particularly if they, if it's a grant, they may have 25% on that grant, and 75% of their salary may be somewhere else. So it is difficult to get down to the, to a final number. And I don't really know, because I don't look at anybody's compensation. Would that? Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Callison. Councilor Teehee?
Well, good morning, Treasurer Taylor.
Good morning.
It is wonderful to see you and your staff here today. And I do want to commend you and your staff on all of the hard work that has taken place over months to bring this concise and succinct budget to us, especially in such a digestible presentation. I do want to note that for over 20 straight years, Cherokee Nation has received the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting by the Government Finance Officers Association, and today I can absolutely see why. So, to my question.
Okay.
My question is, you did mention that there's a flat budget. However, you did note that there's a slight increase in both IDC and fringe for FTE. So how do you see departments kind of grappling with that? Because in a flat budget year, even a slight increase in those two rates does kind of result in having to cut in certain areas to compensate for those rates. So how do you see departments handling that?
Jamie gets down a little more in the weeds than I do, so.
Sure. Thank you for that question, Council Lady. So you might notice that our grants and compacts funding, we refer to as our federal funding, has increased. With indirect cost, we're able to spread that across more funding. So although we asked the discretionary budgets to initially submit a flat budget, we also asked them to submit their federal funding budgets based upon what they expect to receive or what they've applied for. And as you'll notice, we have a much more significant amount of federal funding than we have in years past. So that's why we have more indirect cost to support those programs.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. That was the only question that I had for the moment, and I appreciate that, Mr. Cole and Treasurer Taylor. Thank you for the time, Chair.
Counselor Dobbins?
Yes, Treasurer, you said that the departments are all asked to submit a flat budget. How do we factor in these unprecedented inflation times? Does that mean they're just going to have to incorporate that into their flat budget? Do we look at inflation and how it's impacting us?
And remember that we have budget mods every month. So this is just kind of our jumping off point. And so we always come back. If we see a place that there's significant need, we always come back and plug that hole. We just got to start somewhere.
Okay. Thank you, Treasurer.
Thank you, Mr. Dobbins. Mr. Kidwell?
Treasurer Taylor, thank you for being here today. This is it's a lot of information. We've been digesting this as best we could for a few weeks now. I've got one question for you though on the FTE slideshow that you gave us. In a previous life, having dealt with some of this stuff, we would look at the vacancies, which are now we're sitting at about 1,120 vacancies, but yet we're requesting 340 new. Now, I understand that those aren't equivalent. I'm not going to try to compare apples to oranges. But on the vacancies, some departments having 1188, and I understand health care with 572. But how many years at what point do we evaluate those FTE that are vacant over a course of a number of years and reprogram those to meet the new oncoming need for future years? Meaning, I understand that we might have a vacancy from 3 months ago, and we're trying to fill that. Some of these vacancies may be vacant for more than 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. At what point do we internally reprogram those?
And some of those vacancies have been filled since this information went in. I've had a couple of departments call and say, I'm showing 5 vacancies and I don't have that many. So some of it is simply a matter of hard to fill positions. And I know in my department, we have had positions that have gone out, been posted as a job 3 and 4 times, and don't have somebody that meets the education requirement or just don't have the applicants for it, and so we keep trying. We have been in the midst of a compensation study for Cherokee Nation. Part of it is we were lagging behind on some of the pay. And so I do think that we will see a change in that. We've got a lot of changes going on in HR. As far as saying we keep it on the books for 3 years and then it's gone, there's no set time for that. But certainly departments do need to look at if they're carrying these vacant positions for years and years. And that's one of the things that in the budget review process, we go over and say, look, this was vacant last year. What's the problem with it? Sometimes they'll be filled and they'll become vacant again. So it's an ongoing process trying to get to the bottom of it.
Yeah, well, I understand that it can oftentimes be difficult. If there was if any of the departments have a list of these vacancies that have been vacant for 3 years or longer, I would like to see those
Okay.
if we could, please.
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Kidwell. Mr. Deere?
Hey, Treasurer. Talking about what Kidwell was talking about with the FTEs and all the vacancies, I mean, I know some were open last year's budget. At what point do you reallocate those funds if they're not being used, and who is responsible for where that money goes? Does it just go back, like say it's health? Does it go back into health, or does it come through you guys and we figure out maybe put it towards another health facility? Does that make sense if those positions are open, say there's like $1.5 million,
Yeah.
it's not being used? At what point in the year do they reevaluate that and say, okay, we're probably not filling that, let's take that budgeted money? Because we don't see the carryover from health last year to this year if they didn't use it.
Well, and a lot of times, something you have to keep in mind is certain funding comes down only for salaries. And so if it comes down simply for a pediatric provider and we can't fill it, we can't take that money and, buy a swing set at the school. So that's another thing that gets in the weeds, makes it a little bit difficult to reconcile that and just take the funding and do something else with it. You can't always do that.
So where does that funding go at the end of the year if you just, because they're asking for the same amount for those providers this year, but they didn't use last year's budget money?
And particularly with health, if it is a set aside for a specific thing, it's federal, they can't do anything else with it, so it just sits there
So it just
until
sits there?
they can, yes. Which is a good thing because a lot of the funding expires if you don't use it, and so then we just forfeit that. But if it doesn't, and it's for a specific purpose, we just leave it there.
So there is a time limit that it can sit there before they just
Sometimes,
take that, correct?
yeah.
Okay, I was just wondering,
Not
because
every
even
time.
in HR or the other departments, sometimes that money sits there too. We can't fill those spots. And not just picking on health, but for all those departments reallocating those funds, because in a business world, you find out at the end of the year, there's that time you need to go buy equipment to offset your stuff, so that was the main question I had. Yeah, Jane?
I was going to add one thing too. On some of the budgets, they'll say they have 10 positions budgeted, but on the bottom of their spreadsheet, they'll say they'll have a not filled or vacancy, forgetting what. Yeah, anticipated turnover. So there's actually a negative number that comes out of their budget for their salaries and stuff, because they know they can't fill all of them, but they have to have those individual positions budgeted in order to be able to advertise and try to fill them, but they realize that they're not going to pay out all that money, so it's actually a negative coming out of their total budget, so.
Yeah, that's what I was looking at, because, we have 50-plus projects going on. If we could use that, I know federally you can't use it, but
Right.
other funds, maybe to help offset some of the inflation costs. I didn't know if that's what goes on towards the end of the year to separate that into their
And
department.
most of the vacancies are in, like health and grant funds and stuff, to where it's just being, carried forward and used for that purpose only. It's not like, it's, gen fund dollars that we could say, okay, you're not filling that this year, in the middle of the year and pull it from them or anything like that, but.
Yeah, because there's a bunch of bonuses in here that we've looked at, and being short-staffed, they're having to work
Oh, yeah.
twice as hard.
Yeah.
Right.
And so my general thought is if they're working short-staffed, they're working harder. To allocate maybe to those particular areas to reward that staff that work for Cherokee Nation that are short-staffed, that are waiting for, HR to find somebody. So that's sort of where I was going with that, the extra funding. Does it get reallocated? I know federal funds, you can't move it around.
Right.
So that was my question, so.
And there's other constraints too. I know in financial resources, we simply don't have the space. We've got 2 people in a lot of our offices. We could use some other people to help, particularly with all of these payments that have been going out with ARPA dollars. We don't have a place to put them. And so that's another thing. Positions may be put in here anticipating some of the building projects that are imminent. And then once we have office space for them, they will fill that position and have somebody there. So there's a variety of factors.
Okay, on the last comment I have is, Denise, you and your team did a great job putting this together as I went through this. It was really easy to read and going through it, so I just applaud your staff. And
Thank you.
And thank you guys. I know you didn't do it overnight, so.
No, they did a great job.
But
And
job well done, Oda.
yeah, well, thank you. And I encourage you to keep those budget books handy because the program narratives are very helpful going forward, figuring out who exactly does what when you get down to what your individual constituents need. They're very helpful for that.
Thank you. I see no other hands, but Counselor Deere said applaud your team, and I think literally we need to applaud your team. The work that goes into making today happen. The treasurer is very humble about the fact that her team makes it happen, and I appreciate that. It truly does. Treasurer will be with us throughout the hearings, and she will also be back later in the day, just representing the budget for the Financial Resources Group as well. So she will be here through thick and thin, and be answering questions as we need her.
Treasurer's not only humble about that, treasurer is truthful that they make it happen.
Well, we appreciate you and your staff. Unless you've got any closing comments, I think we can move on to Mr. Bunch representing the Office of Chief.
I'll be here all day.
Good morning, Corey. Thank you.
Good morning. I think I have the microphone on now. I just want to say good morning. It's a pleasure to be here this morning in front of this tribal council. And on behalf of Chief and our Deputy Chief, we want to say thank you for allowing us to present this budget to you. We've made great progress this past year, and there's terrific momentum going forward, and we're looking forward to what will be accomplished in this next fiscal year. But I believe you have our budget from the Office of Principal Chief, which includes several, and I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you, Corey. Do we have questions for Corey relating to the Chief, Deputy Chief, Secretary of State, and Government Relations budgets? Yes, Mr. Goodwill.
Mr. Bunch, good
Morning.
seeing you this weekend.
Good to see you.
Great work. Great work as always. I've just got a real quick question for you on, and it has to do with your line item on Chief of Staff and 2041011. It's very general, but you have two positions, both TBD. What do you envision those positions to be?
Well, thank you, Counselor, for that question. And envision one position to be special projects and the other to be a policy person. As you guys know, the Office of Principal Chief and Chief of Staff is very, very busy. I've not held this position for quite a year yet, but one of the things I quickly noticed is that they do a lot of work with just a few people. The Office of Principal Chief runs very, very lean. I'm here to tell you that. I've been involved in a lot of other organizations, so I've been requesting this for Chief for quite some time, and he's allowing me to move forward with these two positions.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Crittenden.
Just real quick, Corey, in this not quite a year, you've done a great job.
Thank you.
I
Yes, he has.
appreciate you answering that phone, being professional, and proud of you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I thought I was going to get ahead of Counselor Teehee there. Counselor Teehee.
Yeah, I really appreciate the question from Counselor Kidwell regarding those new positions. I do commend you and your staff. I know that the sheer volume of work that comes through the Chief of Staff's office is just almost immeasurable. So I think that adding two new positions to assist with that workload will be a real positive, not only for the staff that are existing, but also for the citizens who are reaching out and calling on those staff as well.
Well, thank you. We definitely want to stay on top of things. I can give you an example of why I need more staff. I sent and received over 17,000 emails in the first 6 months of this calendar year.
Wow.
And those are just emails. So very busy office, and I want to do the best I can, so having additional hands on deck will definitely be appreciated.
Wonderful. Well, I commend you on the job that you've done today, Chief of Staff, and I know that the future is bright, and you will continue to work hard for Cherokee Nation and its citizens. And I just want to echo what Counselor Crittenden said as well. You're someone who always answers your phone, and that is
Thank you.
something that's very much appreciated.
Thank you.
Very much.
Thank you for the time.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, Chair,
Yes,
I just want to
Mr.
also go on record as saying thank you to our treasurer and her staff for working with us on these budgets, and also thank you to our executive directors and their teams. A lot of work goes into this, and again, thank you for any consideration.
Mr. Shambaugh.
Just a quick comment. Chief's office is not funded federally, correct? It's just funded with Cherokee Nation funds, is that correct?
Is that correct, Jamie? Yeah, so indirect costs and some general fund.
Yeah, well, that's, that's an important thing too, because, that federal money has federal guidelines and because it's, we can do, or you guys can do different things with our own money to help different programs, help people, things like that. And that's important to know that the chief's office does do a good job of that. Some of the funding things they do for the people in the council, we certainly appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shambaugh. I see no more questions. Mr. Bunch?
Okay, thank you, guys. I'll be here all day.
Appreciate it. Representing the Offices of Veterans Affairs and CCO. I see Mr. Stretch back there. And Secretary Crittenden. Good morning, Secretary Crittenden. You are.
I am, okay. Well, good morning.
Good morning.
I'm in a room full of warriors for our people. It's good to be here. I want to start off by thanking a couple of council folks that helped a lot with the dinner we had, or the lunch we had last Friday. What a great job you all done. Councilman Kidwell and the Speaker. I hope I don't leave anybody out, but I know you two were very, very busy helping us with the food and everything. And and my nephew Sean was instrumental. And I don't know if anybody saw that quartet up on stage, but that was interesting. So back to the budget, the stuff at hand here. We're a little behind, but our budget is essentially flat, with the exception of some salaries increases, and of course the Warrior Flight that we've got going November. As you all know, we didn't do a Warrior Flight in 20 and 21, and so the budgets for those years were smaller. This year, we're back in the plans to have the Warrior Flight again. And so that's where the increases primarily are. If you look at our budget there, we've got the travel increase from 25 to 68. Salaries and fringes went up. And otherwise, we would be, if it was not for the Warrior Flight, and I'm glad it is, hopefully the virus will hold off and let us do the Warrior Flight. And I know some of you all are planning on going to that same event. What a great event it'll be. And Lord willing, we'll get to take the Miss Dudley with us on that Warrior Flight. The first time we'll ever take a 100-year-old person, a Cherokee citizen, on the Warrior Flight with us. I hope that can happen. But that's where we're at as far as our budget this year. And I'll hush and let anybody make comments or ask questions.
Are there any comments, questions? Mr. Deere?
How are you, sir?
Just fine.
Hey, the 100-year-old is awesome, right?
She is.
And you all also have invited Mr. Paul Dudley. He will actually turn 99 on that flight.
Ah.
So
okay.
he will be going, so I think it's a great.
Thank you. Yes,
So
I do too.
that Cherokee Warrior event, me and EO, I remember last year we went, and we had a blast because the stories those people are amazing, so I
Yeah.
appreciate all you guys do over there at Veterans Affairs for our vets.
Councilman, you normally hear stories on that trip.
Yeah.
That maybe that's the first time they've shared it where some family member that's lived with them for, like a wife, in some cases 60 years or so, or 60 plus, and they've never heard that story before. And they'll tell another veteran oftentimes when they won't tell other people. That's the nature of it, I think. And when they get emotional at the wall or the different memorials, it's like a smile. It's contagious. One of the highlights of my time with the Warriors was at the cemetery, Arlington. When we had to wait for a little while to go on our little tour through the cemetery, we had some speakers on the bus. And they actually broke into Cherokee gospel songs while we waited. And I told them after it was over, I said, you know, this might be the only time in history that Cherokees have sang together at the entrance of Arlington before a tour. So several people recorded it. And by the way, while we're talking about speakers, or I am, Mr. Teehee passed away and requested a Navy flag. A lot of people request a Cherokee flag, but this gentleman, a Korean War vet, wanted a Navy flag, and we happen to have one at the Veterans Center. Howard Payden is taking it to them today. But he was a fluent speaker, so there's one more of our fluent speakers that we don't have with us anymore. So we need to keep their families and all, and I know you do. You pray every time we have meetings. Thank you for that. Any other questions?
Mr. Shambaugh?
Just real quick, just want to recognize Councilman Callison. He was carrying 6 plates at a time, so one on his flat head.
Coach or Councilman, I beg your pardon, sir. There was a lot going on. Yeah, well, I know you didn't, sir, but we appreciate it. And it was a success, fellas and ladies. A lot of good comments and stuff. And so we had admin there, and well turned out. We had a little food left over, but we made use of it, and nothing, as far as I know, went to waste. So it was a good night, or a good day. Any other questions?
Mr. Kidwell, I will ask that you keep your questions and comments in relation to the budget. We need to make sure that, for brevity's sake, and that we keep our comments in relation to the budget issues today.
I appreciate that,
Thank
Chair. I
you.
wouldn't raise my hand if it wasn't related to the budget.
Thank you.
Secretary Crittenden, thank you, sir, for being here today. I appreciate it. I just had a quick question. Even though it's a flat budget, do you anticipate future years kind of growing the Veterans Center staff and putting more FTE up under your control there?
There's a good possibility, Councilman, and thank you for asking that question. We are in line for a grant that has to do with mental state of veterans, and if we get awarded that, there may be upwards of 7 or 8 positions that we might wind up needing to fill. It'll be a 3-year thing to start with. I'll know more about it before long, yay or nay, and that would include some increases in space and so on. So thank you for that.
All right, thank you, Mr. Secretary. Chair?
Thank you, Mr. Secretary.
Any other questions?
Ms. Teehee?
I know we are moving at a speedy pace, but we have 3 days that have been scheduled for these budget hearings. So hopefully we are able to fully ask questions as we see fit as we're representing our constituency. The Office of Veterans Affairs does a lot of wonderful work. And one of the things I saw in the budget narrative was the memorandum of agreement with the Eastern Oklahoma Food Bank to
Yes.
help provide food for veterans. Currently, do you have an idea of how many veterans are served through that MOA?
Well, the ones that are served here, there's usually we target 125 veteran families here. Then we have 60 at Nowata and South Coffeyville, 60. So, and not all the time do they all show up, but they're pretty well attended, and everybody likes the program, and they're there ahead of time waiting on the food. So, is there a need for that? Yes, there is. And we had those folks that do do the food, Eastern Oklahoma Food Bank, we had them down for a little celebration and a big thank you. And the type people they are, they were our guest of honor and they brought the food. They figured that out, so, and it was good. It's always good, so that's a great program, and we're very thankful we've got it. And we're thinking about another location, possibly, and maybe in Adair County, hopefully.
Okay. Well, that is great, and the potential expansion of that program, I know, would help a lot of people. I do want to say personally, thank you very much for recognizing the passing of Chief David Teehee.
Yes.
He is a family member of mine and a veteran, a Cherokee speaker, and a towering figure in the Cherokee community. So I want to personally say thank you for recognizing his passing in this moment.
Thank you, Candace.
Thank you for the time, Chair.
Yes, and thank you for your comments. And is there any other questions about the budget? Keith?
I don't see any.
All right.
All
Well, thank
right.
you all very much.
Thank
Thanks
you,
for the
Mr.
good work.
Secretary. Appreciate the work your department does.
By the way, Director Foreman deserves a lot of thank you and credit for all the things that take place at the Veterans Center. She is a workaholic, and she keeps me, I tell her she's like my wife. You know, she keeps me, she looks around and finds something for me to do, so that's good, all right?
I think you will find all of us would agree with you on her value. Mr. Stretch, tell us what's good.
I'm here today to tell you that the CCO humbly serves the Cherokee people, and it's because you guys are so gracious to help us out as well financially, and we appreciate your support, and we do what we can to help organizations and people throughout the United States. So, well done.
Do we have questions for Mr. Stretch today? Wow. Yes, Mr. Sam.
Was that close?
That was close. On the cemetery, I just had some questions on expansion of some of the cemeteries. I know, unfortunately, some of them are running out of room now. Is there any need for funding for that, or is it possible to help fund some of those cemeteries?
We're not aware of anyone that's asked for increased funding or expanding cemeteries. So I know there was issues on fencing previously, but no. But we have this year funded the largest amount of cemeteries that we have ever done. So.
All right. Are there other questions? Well, perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Stretch. So next on the agenda is Miss Julia Hubbard with Communications. Good morning, Julie.
Good morning. How are you guys? It was a great Cherokee National Holiday. Enjoyed seeing you guys all there. Like, we had great media coverage from our news stations that came out, and I know we had lots of people posting on social media all of the great times they had. So anyway, we were very appreciative, and I think you just want to give a shout out to my staff because they all probably slept in yesterday from all the events.
Is there anything about this year's budget that you would like to share with us?
I think you guys have the budget in front of you. I mean, I think we're like everyone else, and just, you know, we do a lot of coverage for Cherokee Nation. So as you can imagine, all the programs, all the services, everything that we have, our office covers everything to get out to the public. So we just always in need of more bodies.
Well, it's an important task. Is there questions for Ms. Hubbard today? I guess not.
All right. That
Thank
was
you for your
easy.
work. Thank you, team. Next, we have Judge Luke Bartow representing our courts.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Congratulations on a successful holiday. Looking over our budget, we have had are asking for some increases. Mainly, those increases have to do, of course, with the side effects of McGirt and Hogner. We have a lot of programs that we're wanting to implement, including some domestic violence courts, or gear those up a little more. So a lot of that funding that we're asking for an increase on is court staff. Some of them are directly, quoted as court clerks. Some aren't named yet because right now we don't have, we know we need someone, but we don't know if it's a clerk or more of a social worker for those courts to keep track of everyone, or if we need more probation officers within the court to do that. Other increases that I believe are in the budget have to do with things like psychological evaluations for defendants and getting them where they need to be instead of doing a one-size-fits-all, because that doesn't work for us or anyone else when it comes to a court. Other than that, does anyone have any questions?
Anybody have questions for Judge Bartow this morning? Yes, Mr. Legg.
I don't have a question, but if you would share with the rest of the council how much a psych eval cost us.
If we have to go to a private practitioner and actually have that practitioner come into court, we're probably looking around $7,500 when all said and is done. Julie Skinner, Behavioral Health, I've gotten with her this year, though, and they've been a godsend for our budget, and they are taking over a lot of those evaluations through health.
Good, good.
Yeah.
We appreciate you, Luke.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, Mr. Shambaugh.
Have you budgeted for additional judges? Because a problem that we're seeing is if people have to travel from Kenwood or Adair County to Tahlequah for court, have you budgeted for maybe that we can start having court in other counties? Because it is a hardship on people to get here.
I believe there's one empty judge position in this budget. I think those would kind of naturally follow with courthouses being built within those budget modifications. I will tell you that we are, this past summer, we started some of the juvenile delinquent court cases at the courthouse in Jay. I believe next month we'll be doing a child support docket there also, and every month moving out. So we are trying to expand as best we can.
Well, it would be good to have a traveling judge, if we could fund one that could go to different counties, because it was hard for people to come from Kenwood to Jay for court, nevertheless Kenwood to Tahlequah. So that may be something, if you've allocated, you might look at that. That's a big deal, especially criminal cases, a ton of them.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Callison.
Judge, thank you for coming this morning. There was some talk earlier in the year about a building somewhere in Councilor Deere's area as a courthouse. Is that into this budget, and is that still something we're looking at for this year, or is that something that's just not there no more?
I can't speak directly on that, and one of the reasons why I can't is, in any court system, the judges really don't have a lot of say in courthouses. But I think Cherokee Nation, when we were looking at that, we wanted to work well with our community partners, and that one just wasn't there at the time. So I believe we're looking at other locations at this point, but I also may not have all the facts on that.
Thank you.
Anything else? Yes, Ms. Teehee.
Thank you for being with us this morning, Judge Bartow. I think that when we start looking at the budget, there has been an exponential increase, but it's in response to an exponential increase in need as well. One of the things that I hear concerns from with constituents is things that may not be related to, a cost with associated with, you know, a vacant judge position or anything like that, but more with support staff. And some of those issues like the court website being kind of up and down. So as we increase in these functions, are we also increasing in support staff to kind of support the function of the court itself?
Right, so when it comes to court staff, we've hired a couple more this year, and for different reasons, we've already lost them. So we have been looking at that as, I know some previous discussions this morning, all departments kind of have a problem right now getting a full staff load. We've added additional, I believe, around 7 more positions in the district court budget for those types of things. I've also been in contact with HR, and we've kind of have a recruitment plan moving forward. As soon as this is passed, we can start working on that to get those positions filled. I will say, you know, the exponential increase last year, we filed at the district court level just over 6,000 cases. Before that, our highest year was 1,200, so a literal 500% increase. By working the numbers last week, I'm projecting between 71 and 7,200 cases filed at the district court this year. So those are things that, as we can get those staff levels increased, a lot of those issues will subside.
Okay, that's wonderful to hear that there is a recruitment plan in place, because I know that, you know, the work that our judiciary does is critical, and oftentimes the support staff is in charge of paperwork that is extremely critical, that is shared with other branches of government as well, including this, you know, the Cherokee Nation Marshal Service. So making sure that that is both accurate, timely, and it is, you know, I'm not telling you anything you don't know. I know you know exactly what I'm saying. That's all critical. So the recruitment plan, I'm very glad to hear about that. Counselor Legg asked about the costs associated with the psych eval, and so I assume that there are probably a lot of costs associated with the operation of the judiciary that people might not immediately think of. So when it comes to jury trials, oftentimes in non-tribal jury trials, those jurors receive some minor compensation for their work as a juror. Is that something that we do here within Cherokee Nation as well?
Yes, it is. I can't give you the exact number, but they do receive mileage, which, you know, if they're from farther out in the reservation, that'll help them get here on those days. And then we do have in our budget for once they go to deliberation, if they're stuck here for, you know, 20, or not 24 hours, but all day, that we can provide food and drinks for them while they're here.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for speaking to that. I appreciate your time this morning, Judge Bartow, and your patience. And thank you for the time, Chair.
Anybody else? Judge, do you have docket today?
I started at 10 o'clock.
All right.
So.
Well, go take care of the people, all right?
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate you. Okay, next we have boards and commissions. That'd be Secretary of State or Tara Lee or both. Good morning, Secretary of State.
Hello. Tara Lee won't be here today. She had a death in the family and has a funeral today. I really only have 2 boards and commission budgets. The rest of them operate either within their department areas or there's no money involved. The first one would be Arkansas Riverbed Project. That's been an ongoing project since the 90s, I believe. I know I served on as their director throughout the 90s, so I know it went back that far, and there was one director before me. That is basically a pass-through budget for the 3 tribes to protect the lands on the Arkansas Riverbed or to help with any leases that we have on Arkansas Riverbed. It only had a $185 increase, and that's based on what the government provides to them. The federal government provides the funding, that we pass through, and they've always let the Cherokee Nation administer those funds. The second one is the Election Commission, and they have ramped up this year because of the upcoming election. Their contract services of less than $5,000 and contract services of greater than $5,000, plus the addition of a couple of positions has ramped, and I think there was a replacement of several of their, if not most of their election equipment because of its age. So they have ramped up and are showing about a $700,000, $983 increase for an election year. And then they go back into a mode where they usually stay with the present budget that they've had the year before. So would there be any questions?
Would there be any questions? Yes, Mr. Deere.
On this budget, you said it's a pass-through, and it covers the 3 tribes, right?
Yes. Yes,
So
sir.
is there some reason why it directly goes to us and it doesn't go through them and they pass it through?
It's just always been that way, that the 3 tribes got together years ago and determined that the Cherokees would administer the funding.
Okay, and this is just the border of the river that they always are protecting with the treaty rights, and it doesn't get into the water rights of the middle or any of that on Arkansas?
Well, it gets into the leases,
Right,
and the leases are fairly substantial for oil and gas.
right.
And there are accounts now that each tribe has for the riverbed funding that they receive from the federal government. So there's some help there. And then they have their meetings with intertribal. So they have their meetings 4 times a year, and I'm sure that everyone on this body would be welcome to go to those meetings.
Yeah, I attended those meetings that you're talking about, and the reason why it came up in Tulsa is all the projects going on right in the middle of Arkansas. And what made me wonder is, will that price increase later? Because I think there's going to be more litigation coming up with the projects.
It could, Counselor Deere. That's been a pretty consistent amount from year to year. There's always been just a little dab of an increase. I think when I operated it, it was around about 160, 170,000. And it's up to 22 budget was 254,944. And the budget requested this year as a pass-through is 255,129. So, $185 increase was all that the government wanted to do this year. It's totally federal funding.
Right,
There's no tribal funding whatsoever.
right. And that's why I was wondering on the federal funding when it protects those with the leases, so.
They're actually doing a lot of surveying.
Yeah.
They do, the money is really budgeted between operation and then the contracts greater than 5,000, which is the surveying. And they're probably doing $50,000, $60,000 worth of surveying each year, maybe a little more than that. I'd have to go back and look at their breakdown, but it's pretty consistent from year to year. Back when I operated it, it was a lot of abstracting at that time. We did the abstracting, we did the title opinions, and then it was determined where the surveying needed to be done.
Okay.
And that's ongoing.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair.
Anybody else? All right, thank you,
Okay.
Secretary Singh.
Thank you.
Well, that brings us to our break. We'll take a nice break here for 10 minutes. We'll be back at 10:25. We've got a quorum in the room. This meeting is called back to order at 10:26. Next on our schedule is the Office of Attorney General and our Attorney General, Ms. Sarah Hill. Thank you, Ms. Sarah Hill, for being here today.
I think that all of you have seen since the McGirt decision, an upward trend. We've done a lot of hiring in the last couple of years. We're still in need of additional staff. We're still working toward expansion, as I think you heard Judge Bartow discuss earlier, planning for future expansion of the court system. So I would be happy to answer any questions that you may have about the budget. Certainly, it's not a flat budget. I haven't had a flat budget in a while. So if there's any, but I don't think that's a surprise to any of you. I think all of you are well aware that we would be coming and asking for additional money. I still need to hire more lawyers. We have had difficulty. I will say the market has been difficult. It's difficult to attract people to Tahlequah. It's easier if you're close to a big municipality. It is a little more difficult to get these young lawyers to come to Tahlequah and work. But we are finding different ways to make it attractive. It's easier, of course, when we have young Cherokees who are from this region who might want to come home and work for their tribe. So we're doing the best that we can. We've also got a huge increase in support staff. So although it shows some vacant positions, we've made some good progress in getting those filled just in the last few months.
Thank you, Ms. A.G. You certainly have been given a big task since you've been in your position, and we appreciate the work that you do. Are there questions for Ms. Hill this morning? Yes, Mr. Deere.
I was looking through here, you got clerk 1, clerk 2, clerk 3, and you say support staff. Are you getting people coming through HR and it's still taking a couple of months for them to get through the process, or?
We've had pretty good luck. I think HR appreciates the nature of the issues that we've had, and so the new Samantha Hendricks, I say new, she's been around for a while now.
Yeah.
Our HR director has been really good to prioritize with my pleading phone calls to her sometimes about the need for these folks. So we haven't seen big delays. I mean, it takes some time. It always takes some time to get people. But we've had good luck with getting these positions filled, and HR has been very responsive to our requests for help on that.
So did this budget include, if we put a courthouse, which we know we're looking in the Northern District, does this include staff for that area as well?
It includes, there's room here for us to staff up for that, yes. I've got some staff that already live in Tulsa and commute
Yeah.
to Tahlequah, and they're happy to continue doing that, but I'm sure given the price of gas, they'd be happy to have another option too. So if in the future we're able to locate a suitable place in that area, I'm sure they would be happy to do that. It would also be easier, like I said, to attract, especially some of those graduates. They like that Tulsa lifestyle. They like being closer to all the shopping and all of those things that you have in Tulsa, the nightlife. It's a little bit harder to convince them to come out here to Tahlequah.
Okay, I was just making sure the budget covered that, because I know it's growing very fast.
Well, and the poor folks at finance know that we've been pretty free with the budget modifications too. So if there's some issue that pops up, we are able to go to, the treasurer, and able to go to human resources and say, we have this new need that's really becoming critical. Can you help us work through it? And they've been good to help us do that.
Okay.
The other thing that I haven't talked about as much is employment is a huge part of McGirt, but so is the litigation budget. The expense of fighting every fight with Governor Stitt is not a small thing. It's something that, there's a burden that the state bears with its decision to litigate with the tribes instead of work with the tribes. And then your tax dollars on the Oklahoma side go to support that fight. And then on the tribal side, we have to defend those lawsuits.
Yeah.
And so that's a lot of dollars that could be used to support our communities in Oklahoma that are instead going to pay lawyers, which I don't like, even though I am one, and I'm sure that our citizens don't like. But that's the situation that we're in. We have to defend our sovereignty.
Right. Okay, thank you, sir.
Mr. Shambaugh?
Attorney General Hill, I know that one of the community buildings in Delaware County has been turned into a courthouse, which is currently being used for juveniles. In this budget, is there any provisions to either find a building or compact with a district court to use their courthouses so people won't have to travel so far from all over to go to those court dates? I mean, I get calls from attorneys that are just saying, hey, this is crazy that, this guy has a hard time getting to town, nevertheless getting to Tahlequah. Is there anything in this budget that addresses maybe those issues of finding a place to have court in different communities?
That's a great question, Mr. Speaker, and one that I've wrestled with a lot. Certainly at least in J, we have a building there that's suitable for having court. It is small. It is smaller than we would like, even for a relatively small community. But it has been very difficult to work with the state. And the state, of course, has had 100 years of opportunities to build out courthouses. So they're the ones that have this kind of infrastructure. Yes, this budget does address the staffing needs. I actually have one of my lawyers full-time in J now, and we also have a full-time paralegal and I think a probation officer in that same area. So we are moving that direction, prepared to do that, trying to get, it's still sort of a dance to get the court and the AG's office and everyone to work that out in a way that doesn't overwhelm that area. And plus, that building is so small, and with the increased incidence of COVID, it's hard to decide when to pull the trigger on that. I understand that it's a hardship if you live in Bartlesville and you have to come to court in Tahlequah. That is a long drive. That's why we've been intently focused on finding a northern courthouse.
Have you thought about compacting with any of the state courthouses? I mean, the county courthouses?
We've looked at that in great detail, even going so far as to have very specific conversations, and we have been unable to find a workable solution.
Not even for once a week?
Not at all.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Yes, Ms. Teague.
Good morning, Attorney General. It's good to see you this morning. I know we see you once a month, but this is unique because we get to ask you budgetary questions.
I will pretend like I know all these numbers, and when I don't know, then the treasurer can jump up and help me, maybe.
I appreciate that. I was noticing in the budget narrative that there are 2 grants that have been applied for that would cover a cost for assistant attorney generals to be appointed as special assistant U.S. attorneys. And I was hoping that you might be able to speak to where that grant funding might originate from and the need for those individuals to be appointed as special assistant U.S. attorneys.
So glad you asked that, because I know all the answers to those questions. So I've actually served before myself as a special assistant U.S. attorney for the Northern District in Oklahoma in the Tulsa office. One of the situations with McGirt is that in Indian country, there's a lot of federal and tribal coordination. There are certain crimes that we want the United States to take, and one of the best ways to be sure that our tribal communities are being protected is to put tribal prosecutors in the U.S. Attorney's office, because they know tribal communities, they're often tribal citizens, they go through the training and the background checks that the United States requires, which are intensive, and it gives them an opportunity to have an experience of dealing with indicting someone in a federal court, which is very different than operating in a tribal court. So it helps bring the tribal community into the federal court, and it brings those tribal priorities into the federal court when you have spouses. The grant money is designed to help us do that exactly. The issue that and that money comes from the Department of Justice to do that. The only issue that I've had with that so far is that because it is so different, a federal prosecution is an entirely different animal than a tribal or a state prosecution. The law is extremely different. The processes are very rigid. You have to follow the DOJ bureaucracy, which makes our bureaucracy look small and nimble. The DOJ bureaucracy is intense, and you have to learn and understand all of that, and it takes time to do that. It takes someone a year just to understand the process, really, of doing a federal prosecution. I am just absolutely in dire need of tribal prosecutors right now. It is hard for me to take out one of my talented young tribal prosecutors and package them up and say, okay, go to the Northern District, I'll see you in a year. Good luck. It would be good for them, it would be good for the tribe, but I just don't have enough people on the payroll yet for that to be very feasible. And trying to send them up there part-time, to me, is not the way for them to be the most successful, because they're not going to be able to learn everything that they need to know to really engage in the federal prosecution the way that we would want them to, unless I'm able to attract a very experienced prosecutor who's got previous experience in the federal system, which those people are hard for tribes to pick up because of the expense that would come along with that experience. So That's where the grant comes from. That's what SOUSes do. That's been some of my struggle with getting those dollars expended. And my best plan to address that is to get my office completely staffed up so I finally do have some room to breathe. And then I can afford to send some of those bright young prosecutors and give them that opportunity.
Okay, so it sounds like there is a lot of special expertise that's required, which is why you really can't just plug anyone into those specific positions. So I appreciate your elaboration on that.
It's not something I would have appreciated if I hadn't had to go there myself and learn some of those things myself. I got a firsthand opportunity to learn how tough it was to get your hands around the federal system. It made me appreciate more how difficult that could be.
Now, since the McGirt ruling and since the Castro Huerta ruling, we unfortunately haven't had a lot of engagement or collaborative effort from the state of Oklahoma. You're speaking to I think you said SOUSA?
SOUSes.
If the state of Oklahoma were to eventually be more cooperative in this process, would there be an equivalent type position that would potentially be created that would be at kind of the state level as well, or is that not really a possibility?
I think that's very possible. I think, this office, I have the ability to appoint assistants myself, so I could take a state prosecutor and let them sit as a special assistant Cherokee Nation Attorney General so that they could follow a case potentially from the state court into the tribal court. I don't know why the state courts couldn't do something similar if they wanted to. It's something that we discussed early in this whole process back when we hoped that there would be more collaboration possible between the state and the tribe, something that we discussed because there are state prosecutors who are tribal citizens who care a lot about Indian country and who would be happy to pick up a case and take it over to tribal court and try it if it turned out that this person who had been a problem in the community on the state side for a long time, they might be really familiar with this person. They might be really familiar with this community and be one of the best people to prosecute that. But as it stands today, there's just very limited opportunities for any kind of state or tribal collaboration or cooperation, unfortunately.
Okay. And of course, that is not emanating from the Cherokee Nation side. We are good community partners who seek to provide a safe atmosphere by addressing issues of public safety. So I appreciate the work from the Office of the Attorney General to that end.
Thank you, Councilwoman. I appreciate that.
Thank you for the time, Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Teague. Mr. Kellison.
A.G. Hill, thank you this morning for being here. In your juvenile justice budget, as it comes through there, is there anything in there that provides us somewhere where if it gets down to us having to send them off, that we have a facility that we are able to put them in, kind of similar to what we're doing with the other thing with the adults?
Juvenile detention is a very different animal than adult detention. There's a lot of very specific rules that have to be followed in juvenile detention. We're fortunate in Oklahoma that we do have a tribal facility that's owned by the Sac and Fox Nation that will detain juveniles. So we do have and we have a contract with them for a certain number of beds, and that has to this point been able to meet our needs, that and the handful of other beds that we have available. I will not pretend like we don't have an issue with juvenile detention. I think the longer that we continue to work on this, the need for that detention is going to grow, and there's a lot of different types of facilities that the state has access to. They have more group home settings, they have treatment facilities and other juvenile facilities that if we could access them, would be very helpful to our programs, and it would be helpful to Oklahoma because we would be happy to pay them for the opportunity to use these facilities. But, the governor has made it very clear that not only is he not interested in that, but that he would like to consume. He's tried to lock up every bed he possibly can to make sure that there is no space available for tribes to even we're actually really fortunate in that we have as much space as we've got. Amongst the tribes, we're probably in the best position. But it is continuing to be an issue and something we're going to have to keep working on.
Are there other questions relating to the budget? All right. Well, we sure appreciate your work all year long and certainly this morning as well.
It's a pleasure to be here with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Education Services, it says here Corey Bunch, but I see Mr. Vance is here with us.
Good morning, council. You guys see our budget here. As you can see, I saw the vacancy on Ms. Janice's 55% openings. That's the Head Start program, so we're working on that. We have 30 to 40 openings there, so we're going to try to fill those this year. We have a full staff at Sequoia. That was one of our goals, so we got that completed. So now we're focusing more on Head Start with that's where you see that vacancy there. And we have 2 new staff members on Education Services in our department, and that's why it was up 2%.
Thank you, Mr. Vance. Mr. Deere?
Hey, Mark, there's a lot of decreases, but some of these programs, since we have, our registration is now way up.
Yeah.
Have we allocated money for those programs, like in Head Start, since we're going to have so many youngers and so many people, like, taking care of high school stuff, programs? You know, like the Cherokee camp got full in, what, an hour? I mean, it was pretty quick.
Yes.
Did we allocate money for the growth of our new registration that we have across the tribe?
Yes, we can. We will start on that, yes. You're right. Good question. Our Camp Cherokee filled up in a matter of 2 weeks.
Yeah.
You know, so, yes, we can check into that.
And so that was my question coming in the budget. Did we look at those numbers versus the capacity that we have for the Head Starts?
Yes.
Because across the nation, a lot of daycares have closed since COVID.
Right.
And they're looking out to Cherokee Nation being a new registered member and having those sources available for them.
Right.
So that was just one of the concerns looking at the budget with a decrease. I know some of this was ARPA funding, those were easy ones, but with the Head Start and the growing is what I was looking at for your budget.
Yes, and we have another grant that we just implemented, AmeriCorps. It's going to help us fill vacancies there, too, on that route.
Okay. And are you having a lot of people apply, or? No.
No, but we have a more attractive pay scale now, so it's going to help.
Okay. So it's more on the market level?
Yes.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thanks, Mark.
Welcome.
Thanks, Chair.
Councilor Vasquez.
Thank you. Hello, Mark. I got a quick question. Under the Cultural Department program, I see that you're going to add an FTE for a school community specialist. Could you tell me what that job is?
Well, our cultural department, they're very talented group, so they'll go into schools, of course. We can do the basket weaving, language. They can do all kinds of things to help go back into our school system. We need more people to do that, so that's what the schools are wanting to do and are requesting. So we're trying to accommodate them in that route.
Great. I'm sure there are plenty of people that fill that spot.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Councilor No Fire.
Mr. Vance?
Yes, sir.
Appreciate you and all the work that we do out there at Sequoia High School, being our Cherokee Nation school there and all the support we give them. I noticed, I was just going over the budget, we have some things that remain relatively the same. Sequoia High School Activity Fund is the same. And I think our Transportation Administration, I think it went up by $32,000. I noticed with the increase in fuel prices, are we worried about that affecting those budgets with far as our students traveling for games? And we don't see that there, increase in there?
No, we're
Okay.
good there.
And then far as our projected uses for the Sequoia High School ARPA funds, I guess majority of those are going to go towards temporary job fulfillments. Is that what it
Yes.
is, 5-year plans?
Yes.
What's our goal with those teachers there? I know it seems like they're relatively high expected gross wages instead of just being a regular teacher. They're going to be specialized in doing exactly what?
Well, when the ARPA funds are gone, they're gone, so it goes back to the main salary that's budgeted in.
Okay, so it's just going to be a bonus pay or?
Correct.
Okay. What's their bonus for? What are they going to get the bonus pay?
We're working for during the COVID-19 crisis is kind of what it was for.
Okay. All right. All right, that's all the questions I have for now. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Ms. Teague.
Good morning, Mr. Vance.
Good morning.
It is so good to see you. The Education Services budget is, a significantly large budget, largely because of the scholarships that are given out. With those scholarships that are given out, would you say that the majority of those are at the undergraduate level?
Yes.
Okay, so how, are there any, or is there any information on what might need to happen to provide funding at the graduate level?
Well, they have the 2,000 at the graduate level also, which covers almost everything. So we have plenty of money there.
When you say covers almost everything, what do you mean by that?
Books, tuition, not travel or anything like that, but the 2,000 covers the master's degree.
Okay, so the graduate applicants who are applying, are they, I know our undergraduate applications are pretty much funded almost at 100%.
Yes.
Would you say that's the same for the graduate applications
Yes.
as well?
Yes.
Okay, that's wonderful to hear. Thank you so much for that information. The next question I have is about Sequoia Schools.
Okay.
Now, the Sequoia Schools budget is represented by an activity fund.
Mm-hmm.
So the other Sequoia Schools budget is, would you kind of describe how that is?
Well, it's tribal funded, BIE funded. The Cherokee Nation picks up most of it, though, because it's an expensive school to go to. But the Cherokee Nation picks up whatever we need to have it picked up at the end of every year.
Okay. I will say that, when it comes to, I know that Counselor Nofire asked about kind of transportation to and from games for our athletes, but my particular question was about kind of funding food
Okay.
for the athletes, pregame, postgame, because, these kids are extremely hungry kids.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And they're growing kids. So how is that kind of handled within the school itself?
Well, they should have a sandwich before and after the game, most away games especially. Pre-game before home games, and then away games, they should have a sandwich after the game.
Okay, and is that something, so for instance, let's, take as an example, say like the football team.
Okay?
So if a coach is making the decision to feed his kids, right,
Right.
which every coach, is making that decision, is that something that's kind of taking money away from the equipment side?
No, no, it should be
So they have to
budgeted.
kind of like choose between buying a helmet or buying sandwiches?
No, they should not have to do that.
They should not have to do
No,
that?
they do not do that.
Okay, so if, say, for instance, we were to visit with Athletic Director Crittenden, he does not have things set up that way?
He should, yes, you should, are you asking if he should not buy a helmet instead of feed them? Is that what you're saying?
Well, is that a choice that coaches have to make?
No, it is
between
not. It is
equipment?
not, no.
Okay,
We feed them and protect them at the same time, so.
okay. All right, that's really good news.
Yeah.
And I appreciate your speaking to that clarification.
Okay.
Well, I know that Sequoia is an expensive school, but Sequoia graduates students who go on to not only Ivy League institutions and graduate
Absolutely.
from Ivy League institutions, they also go to our flagship state institutions, our regional universities, and our honor students and honors grads, and are just amazing, outstanding contributors to not only the Cherokee community, but the Oklahoma and the American community. So I know that Sequoia High School is an amazing place.
That's why it's a school of choice, Dr. McGee.
Absolutely. So I appreciate the work that you and your staff in Education Services do to make sure that not only is the school top-notch, but that we are offering scholarships at the undergraduate and graduate level to fund all Cherokee citizens.
Thank you, Dr.
All
Stevens.
right, thank you for the time, Chair.
Counselor Kidwell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Vance, thank
Yes.
you for being here today. You have a lot of information going on in this, in this budget. Hey, I just wanted to ask you real quick about one thing, and I know it kind of ties into something that we've talked about personally before, but in your college outreach services budget paperwork here, where it talks about the purchasing the cords for the honor grad program, establishing that new program, I'm just wondering if you envision the at-large students, high school students, honor grads being a part of that, or if we would need to plus up your programming budgeted amount to include those people. What is your vision on that?
I think that's a great question, Kidwell, and we get that every year with the high school and college on the cords. We would probably need help from you guys to get that going.
Okay, all right, that'll be something that we can talk about offline. I'm sure it wouldn't be a lot, but we'll dig into it offline.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Mr. Callison.
Mr. Vance, thank you this morning. On your outreach and your culture programs, is there anything in the budget about, I know Sequoia has all the things, but the other zillion public schools within the district about teaching Cherokee history so that the kids have an opportunity to understand exactly what's going on?
Yes, that's a great question, Mr. Collison. We have that question every day with our reservations, and we're working on that with our, we just don't have the funding to get a Cherokee-speaking teacher, and then we can't find one, and then we're trying to work around with our apprentice program to get people involved. But all we have is our culture people you can request, and we have one language person in there that can go to the schools. But are you asking if they can fund them? Or are you asking if they can teach at that school, for example, prior? Is that what you're asking?
Well, I mean, you know, every public school, and as an administrator, you're not going to take away a class that you have to offer Cherokee history to kids. But, I mean, if we could fund it, that's not funded apparently in the budget.
That's correct.
So that's something that we need to work on, like you said, in the outer parts to get this funded, so this is taught in every school on the reservation.
We do offer our Cherokee book, and the curriculum kind of comes with it, but that's all we have right now at this time.
Thank you.
Mr. Legg.
Just a real fast suggestion, maybe hire one teacher and offer a Zoom class.
There you go.
I mean, then we can just do it all at once throughout the 14 counties.
Great idea.
Are there others? Mr. No Fire.
Yeah, just to follow up on when I talked about the Sequoia High School ARPA fund spending plan. Are these are all new positions that I see on here, these secondary certified executive teacher positions. And then we have a paraprofessional. What are have we started filling those? Or
Yes, we are full.
They are full?
Yes, they are full.
Okay, I think there's 9 positions on that total.
No, we're full now. That's
Okay,
old.
what are they teaching, or what's their job?
You talking about the pairs?
Yeah,
The pairs are they go in class and out of class where they can have all kinds of department that needs help, science, math, special ed. They can pull them in and pull them out. They can sub for us if they need it.
okay.
Mr. Bunch.
And this is a salary this is an annual salary, right? That we're seeing on this for their line items, what they're being paid, because I know it's a 5-year budgeted idea. At least that's what it says in the program narrative, is for 5 years to help with learning loss, social, emotional needs, and providing additional resources to ensure security. Our students' achievement increase during and after the pandemic. So they're all full now, so I don't want to do with that. I'm kind of a little bit questioning just the need and the expected gross salary for those positions, because we're paying those excessively more than what we're paying teachers.
Mr. Bunch is on the schedule as well, so you can speak freely.
Oh, thank you, sir. So I was going to say part of what Counselor No Fire just said. Because of the pandemic, there's been at every school, there's been a learning loss. There's learning loss each year because of the long summer breaks and holiday breaks, but because of the pandemic and many of the schools shutting down and ours as well, we thought this would be a great way to spend those funds to add more people to the classroom. That reduces the classroom size as far as how many people we have working with each student. So some of these folks will be helping students recover virtually. Those, we had those last year. And then these paraprofessionals, oftentimes they work with students with special needs. And anytime that your school shuts down and you have special needs students, their learning loss can sometimes be even greater. So these extra folks are really a blessing to us at our school to work with our students. And that's mostly what we're doing. There are some other special programs like the flight program that we have, the Tango Flight, where our students are building an airplane, believe it or not, of all things, and that's going to be part of this extra money as well.
Appreciate
We're
you
trying to-
clearing that up. I'm glad that we're seeing more teachers per student in the classroom. I know that was my mom when being a teacher. She said once it gets above 15, really, it gets that much more difficult to have hands-on to handle those students that might struggle with issues. Also notice we have $300,000 budgeted for student activities. Is that going to be going for things around the athletic department, trying to revamp that up since they suffered a little bit of a setback in our athletics too?
I think part of it will most likely go to athletics, but we really tried to address all the activities at Sequoia schools, and anything, I'm always
Or
telling Mark, we
yeah,
really
secondary.
need to address all the programs, whether it's gifted and talented, band, drama, athletics, whatever it may be. We really try to spread around our resources.
Okay, I know that it's been a driving force for people to come to our school in the past is our success in our athletics and extracurricular activity that we've been able to provide there, such as drama. I know they've been very, very successful there. So just was making sure that we're able to help adequately fund them to bring them back up to par too as being the most attractive position there. I know we got a lot of students that go there. Their parents went to school there. I know I went to school there. It's where I intended to send my kids to go to school at. So it's just kind of a generational thing. And whatever we got to do, we're here to help to make sure that we bring the school back 100% online since the pandemic. So appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Anybody else? All right, Mark, thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Next is that little department called Health. Stephen Jones, Amy Sams. Good morning, Doctor.
All right, good morning. Hope everybody had a good holiday. Take this off since we've got these things here. You see the packet, it's pretty large. So I'll turn it over to you guys to ask questions. I can give you a few highlights if you'd like, but otherwise I'll just entertain questions.
Well, I certainly don't mind anything you feel like is important for us to know before questions.
Okay. Well, we have a decrease in our budget this year, and a lot of that's due to COVID funds, because we had so many things coming at us the last few years with COVID and had timelines on spending. We had to get those budgeted and put into the budget. So you'll see a decrease because of those things. We also have two departments that have been underneath us that are moving out, public health and EMS. So with that, there's going to be a decrease in the budget. You might note that we are budgeting about a 42% increase in third party over last year. So some of that money has been made up. What's leaving through COVID services or COVID funds is made up through third party. So that's some of the highlights, and again, I'll entertain questions, I guess.
Perfect. Thank you for those clarifications. Yes, Counselor Deere.
I would just want to, I want to make sure I'm right on this. The RVU is relative value unit, correct? And that's for providers, is what we're discussing? And then the second one, AU, is accounting unit. That's for employee evaluations, right?
I'm not sure which accounting unit you're talking about.
Well,
but
it says on the bottom,
RVU
AU bonuses on the very last item. That's
Okay.
what I was looking at, because I was trying to do, on these providers, is there, what's the, I mean, it's a bonus program, but they're providers. Can you explain to me, like, providers? Are they like orthopedic that we contract out, or is that what you're calling providers, or?
All of our health professionals are on a contract. Okay? So we set those salaries, and we started this about 3 years ago. This is the first year that we've had actual changes in their salaries. Because of the pandemic, we chose not to increase or decrease salaries the last 2 years. So when a provider comes to work for us, we set them in at a salary that is based on MGMA numbers for that discipline. Now, if a provider exceeds that value, relative value unit for the year, or for the quarter, each quarter, they get a bonus for any level that they go above what our expectation is. Okay, we set that in, and we tell them this is what we expect you to do. If you go above that, then they get a bonus for every RVU, they go above that. And as those RVUs get higher, they get a higher portion of that RVU or a bonus. And that's across our system. So at the end of the year, we look at how they've done on their RVUs for the year, And then we just finished up contract renewals with they all renew October 1st. And we just finished up meeting with all of our providers. 80% of those providers got to raise their salary. So at the end of the year, they get to look at how far above they went, and they get to pick on that scale how high they want their salary according to their RVUs. And so 80% of our providers got to increase if they chose to. About 10% stayed right in the pocket that we set them at, and about 10% actually either decreased or decided not to renew their contract.
Okay, so based on your budget, I don't know, let's just say orthopedics. If we have 10 orthopedics and 8 meet their quota, the other 2 never meet their quota, is that make it where we don't like renew their contract because they're obviously not doing their deficient, and that's part of the bonus stuff?
So if they don't meet the expectation, then we have a conversation, which we had a conversation with some of those folks, and we told them that here's what you achieved, but it did not meet the expectation, so here's the range that we can pay you at that level. So in essence, they're getting paid for what they do for us. If they exceed our expectations, they get a raise. They get to choose their raise on that scale of where they exceeded to. If they don't exceed it, then there is a penalty, and they will be dropped down to the level that they performed. So it's
And with the new clinic and the hospital, I mean, you already have a bunch of vacancies. I mean, filling them, is that budget using the bonuses for those people, even though it's vacant? Is it plus vacant plus employees?
So we don't have a lot of vacancies in our professional side.
Right.
So, because that is an attractive way to do. That's the way the health systems work. That's why MGMA is the gold standard for setting in salaries. We do have vacancies on the other side in our support services and some of our disciplines that don't have that type of structure. We are looking at creative ways to incentivize those different vacancies. Fortunately, we have agencies out there that can provide some of those services, like nursing. We've been short nursing. The whole state's been short. The nation's been short nursing. So we will contract with an agency that will provide those nursing jobs that are absolutely key to our operations until we can find somebody to fill that vacancy. So, so we do have a little bit of, it says vacancies. Our vacancies are what they are, but some of those are filled with contract services until we can find a person to fill those vacancies. But not everybody's on RVUs.
Right.
That's just our providers, the ones that provide care to patients directly.
Okay. The second one is the AU. It says 3% across the board for employees. Is that, so at the end of the year, you do evaluations, I guess once a year, I don't know how often you do it. But it says that bonus in there, 3%. Is that what you give every person if they just have a decent evaluation? Does everybody get 3%?
The evaluations aren't tied to that necessarily. That's the merit that is given each year, that the chief's office decides how that is given out. And in some cases, if you've only been here 6 months, you only be able to get a proportion of that versus someone who's been here the whole year. So, but we do budget that in just so we have it setting aside and we're able to meet that obligation.
So somebody could get 2 and somebody could get 4, based on how long they've been here?
There is instructions that come out each year that determine how that's determined, yeah.
And the reason why I ask is that you have those bonuses, and I know people that differential stuff, is like you have, I would just say clerk 1, I don't remember what it was, you have so many items in there. But I was looking at, say, a clerk 1, and they make $50,000, but then there's another clerk 1 that makes $75,000. Do they ever, like, is there a range, like, say you get to $80,000, you're a clerk 2? Or why is there such a big difference in the same title but bigger salaries?
That's a little deeper conversation, but in the past, the employees had an option. They could add that merit to their base and continue to grow that base, or they could take it as a lump sum.
Okay.
And there were a lot of people that took that as lump sum. They never increased their base. And so you see this disparity between those who, over the years, kept increasing their base, and that compounds. 3% of this amount, you add it to it, now 3% is a little bigger, and it keeps compounding. Now, they're required, I think the requirement, want to say this body voted on and put in place is 1.5% of that has to go to their base, and they have the option on the other 1.5%.
Yeah. Well, the reason why I was asking back to the budget part of it is if there was that big a difference and all of a sudden, I know you have a huge budget, but when you really do it, really is normal. Will that person, will there be a big jump, and is that covered in the budget?
Yeah.
That is
Yeah.
covered and allocated for the growth that we are exponentially going right now?
Yes, I don't think we've ever come back to this body and said we didn't have enough money to cover
Right.
that. So we do budget in everything that we can and anticipate what we can. You know, we can't anticipate everything, but we try to anticipate all those things.
And that's why I was wondering, with so many positions in that budget, I mean, and we're growing
Yeah.
every day. I mean, it's just busy and busy. And hiring more providers, do we have enough in health to cover that?
We feel we do.
Okay.
We feel we do. And you know, we set ourselves goals for third party, because third party makes up a lot of our difference from what IHS gives us. And we set those goals, and we've exceeded them every year since I've been here. But and that gives us a little bit of cushion come toward the end of the year. So we will do that again this year.
Okay. That's all I had, Chair. Thank you.
Councilor Kidwell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dr. Jones, thank you for being here today. Man, I thought Mark Vance had a lot going on in this budget. You got a lot underneath your purview there. Just real quick, I just want to ask you about optometry. You've got the one line item budget thing in here for $6 million for the contract with NSU. How often is that contract negotiated?
It renews each year. We renegotiated it a couple years ago. We went from an all-day fee, so at that time, before the negotiation, it was set up as we paid a fee for a daily fee, regardless of how many patients were seen, or a half-day per optometrist that Northeastern provided for us.
Yeah.
Now that contract is set up on a per-visit fee, so they're incentivized to see our patients and open up more access to our patients.
Great.
The more patients that they provide care for, the more that they will make on their daily fee, because they get paid per visit. So that line item is to pay that. And what happens is they send us back a bill each month for the number of patients that they say that they saw. We validate that in our system to verify that they did see those patients, and then we pay that bill.
Okay, great. I was just wondering, and all that's good information, thank you. I was just wondering how, do we renegotiate that every year, or are we in a 5-year contract with them? Because as we expand, obviously, we're going to, those services that we need are going to get, is all that worked in together? Is it annual renegotiation, or are we locked into 3 years or 5 years?
I think it's just if one party on one side or the other requests
Feels the need?
The need to relook at that contract, we will. The way it's set up, the more they do, the more they get paid. The more that they do, the more services that we open up. So, you know, I remember a day, and some of you on this council can remember that used to be a big thing that we discussed each time in Health Committee, was how many people were on the waiting list trying to get into optometry.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't seem like we have those issues near as much as we used to. So I think the contract's working, the incentives are there. I learned this last week that they even started an incentive program that if their optometrists hit a certain mark, that they get a bonus similar to our RVU system. So all I can see in that is more and more access.
Yeah,
So I'm
that's
happy
good.
about that.
All right, I appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Are there other questions for Dr. Jones this morning?
All right.
Thank you, Dr. Jones.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
All right, that brings us to a break, but with your cooperation, I don't mind going past the break and going on into financial resources. Would that be all right with everybody? All right. Treasurer.
All right. Do we have any questions regarding our financial resources budget? Jamie would be happy to answer them. One thing that I did hit on in my presentation was the ARPA and the CARES Act money. We kind of keep that in financial resources simply because there is so much reporting that goes along with it. It's easier for us to make sure we're meeting compliance as we develop those programs rather than trying to wait until the end. And so there are a few COVID-related budgets in our budget, and the programs do actually roll out the various initiatives, but they work closely with us to make sure that we're in compliance on those.
Perfect. Yes, Mr. Shambo.
You have some pretty significant decreases this year. What's the reasoning behind that?
A lot of it is spend down of those various budgets that I talked about.
Like a fiscal recovery fund?
Yes, that's ARPA,
Right.
actually, is what that is. And then the CARES Act as well had to be fully expended. You'll see that 11 million, almost $12 million down there. That had to be fully expended this year.
All right, thank you, ma'am.
Perfect. Mr. Deere?
The tribal judgment funds, does that ever get used or like received? It says received. Are we ever in that situation? Or is that just a cush area to keep it just in case?
That was established, I think that was a legislative act that established that. Let me get to that, unless you know off the top of your head, Jamie.
390-3310.
Yeah, I see it here. Feel free to
those
speak to
were
it if you know.
Judgments years ago that we received funds into, and
Jamie, would you speak into a microphone, please?
those were various judgments received years ago that we have received revenues into, and we just maintain those balances.
And so it just sits there? Okay. But we're not in anything like that right now. There's nothing on the books for that, right? We're not anything with the feds right now with this, regarding this account. That's just a setting fund.
That's our funds, yes, sir.
Okay.
I'm not aware of anything, any new revenues coming into that, that's unique.
So what can we use it for?
I think one of those in there is, the significant one is I believe the Arkansas Riverbed funds from the settlement from years and years ago. We still have the lion's share of that fund is still related to that settlement. And I think those are restricted for land purchases.
So it has a guideline on it?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Anything else? Well, seeing none, thank you for your good work. And then we'll go ahead and do transportation and infrastructure with Michael N. We will move on to human resources with Samantha Hendricks.
Don't believe Samantha's here.
Well, I don't think we really are, because they're scheduled at 11:20 and it's
Yeah, they should be
11:15.
here.
That's not significantly ahead.
So
Well-
we apologize, Chair.
Okay.
Everyone knew they were expected to be here, so.
Well, we will, lunch is ready. We'll go ahead and take our lunch break and give everybody a chance to get here, but we definitely need all the department heads to pay attention to our scheduling so that we're not waiting for them.
We will send out a reminder to all of them right away.
Thank you. We will recess for lunch.
140, but they could probably do theirs now too. Okay.
Okay. Okay. All systems are go to go ahead and go with Michael, and I think everybody would like to go ahead and do that. So let's go ahead with Michael.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, Council. It's a pleasure to be here before you this morning. I said good afternoon. It's good morning. It's a pleasure to be here this morning to present our budget. Be glad to answer any questions if you have it.
Do we have questions for Michael? Michael, you get the prize.
Excellent. All right.
All right.
Thank you all.
Well, that's worth waiting on. All right, I think I saw Miss Hendricks come in the room too. Good deal. Get us back on track. Or keep us on track, I should say.
I was hustling to get here. So, oh, okay, breathe. I was running. I thought, oh my gosh. Well, you have my information. Be happy to answer any questions that you have in reference to my budget.
Are there questions for HR? We had various questions in some of the other departments that I thought were somewhat related to HR, and now's your chance. All right, well, you hustled. Thank you.
I think I have one question.
I see.
I did hustle over here.
Well, thank you for joining us this morning, Ms. Hendricks. My question about the budget is in relation to, there are some, you have some vacancies and some new positions, and I was wondering if you have a recruitment plan.
I do. We do. Not just for my department, but we are working with the department directors and the executive directors on recruitment plans for their open positions also. So.
Okay. And especially on some of these new positions, I see that they are, they're great positions and in the recruitment plan, especially for those new positions, does that include reviewing existing employees and the talent that you already have in-house? Largely because those individuals know the ins and outs of human resources already, and it may be, in some cases, easier to replace a position that is closer to that entry level rather than maybe hiring from outside the department, from another area, into those kind of mid-level and upper-tier positions.
You're exactly right. So we have looked at our internal workplace, our employees in HR to help promote those. We actually have filled 2 internal with some of those HR business partners that we have in the budget. So we're very much excited about developing the HR department and that skill set.
Wonderful. And in a previous conversation at a previous meeting, you indicated that there was a plan for an employee satisfaction survey that may lead to increased levels of training for managers and higher level positions in response to the findings from an employee satisfaction survey. My understanding of those types of endeavors is that they can incur some level of expense due to whether, you're bringing in, a consultant or, an outside entity to assist in that process. So where is that reflected in the FY23 budget?
That is in the operating expense, and as far as exactly which line item, I'd have to take a look, but we did include that in there.
Okay, great. There has been some discussion on turnaround time for the hiring of new positions. Is the kind of some of these staffing increases and some of the creation of the new positions, is that intended to mitigate those times?
It is due to reduce the amount of time it takes to fill a position. So we've really taken a different look at HR to truly understand where it's at or where it was a year ago, and how do we increase the time to, well, how do we decrease the time to fill and fill those positions quicker? So we've been very strong. When I came to the tribal council meetings, you could hear me saying, well, we're looking at processes. But to truly understand the processes and understand what the next steps need to be to understand those gaps. And that's what this budget, this next year will do, actually fill in those gaps that were identified this previous year.
Okay, I know that especially when we have positions that are youth-sensitive, we're talking about education, we're talking about childcare, those kinds of things, that oftentimes those background checks can extend the time to fill, because there are a lot of considerations that must be taken into account, and I would imagine extra databases must be searched for those individuals. So are all of the background checks, are those currently are those completely done in-house, or are those contracted out? And if they are being contracted out, is that something that is helping to reduce that time to fill?
That is something that we had identified as a gap because of the time to fill those positions. So we did have a team that is doing background screening. So that's one piece of it that was in place when I came to Cherokee Nation. Since that time, because we've had such the volume, we've had an influx of volume of open positions, we have enlisted a third-party vendor to help us with that piece. And so, not totally outsourced, but the ones that take the time so we can provide more services and speed up the process completely on not just the youth sensitive, but the non-youth sensitive too.
Okay, so in some cases, those background checks that are being outsourced are for those that require specialized or intensive processes in that background check, which
That's
I would
correct.
assume may include, like, for instance, the Marshal Service.
That's correct.
Okay. All
Childcare,
right.
yes.
And I think that concludes my questions for you, Ms. Hendricks. I appreciate your time and your patience, and I commend you and your staff on working in this increasingly fast-paced environment and having to adapt to multiple unforeseen stressors in the workplace.
Thank you.
In this interesting times that we live in these
Thank you.
days.
Thank
So,
you.
Thank you, Chair.
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Kidwell?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Hendricks, thank you for being here today. Man, you've got a lot going on in here. I just have one question for you, and I'm reading up on your, it's accounting unit 2041072 for anybody else that wants to kind of look into it, but the employee engagement, right? The new, seems we're starting up a new program there with people identified. I'm reading through it. I looked at it last night. I really like where you're headed on that. On the 17 new positions that are being created for that thing, you talk about in the narrative a talent development specialist. Is that line item number 2? Is that the one in charge of this whole new program?
No, we actually have a director of employee engagement, and that will be over that department. Now, what is also included in that, so those are not actual new positions. There are some new positions in there, but that is moving the benefits team and the training team, which is our talent development specialist type of positions, in underneath that employee engagement, because it handles all of the employee aspect of things of when somebody's actually the employee experience.
Okay, for the budget purposes, when will those existing jobs be moved underneath? Because right now, under that line item, all 17 are listed as new.
That will be October 1.
Okay, so as, at the new fiscal year, you're going to move all, and how many of those new ones will fall under? So there'll be 17 here, and how many other ones?
There's 3 additional positions.
Okay, so 20 altogether. All right, okay, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Is anybody else? Well, seeing none, we appreciate you running
Thank
to
you
get
so
here,
much.
to help us out. Appreciate that. If Shannon Buell is still here, we will go ahead and move the marshal service here before lunch. Thank you for being flexible.
Good afternoon. I usually come mainly to support the treasurer, let her know that staff out here support what she does every day and her staff, so that's one of the reasons why I come early. So if there's any questions, hopefully I can answer them for you.
Mr. Callison.
Marshall Buell, thank you for attending today. When we talked about our deal the other day with the adult detention, are we, and I think the question was asked, we're still paying the other jails
Yes,
on the
we are.
reservation. Is there a number in here, I looked and I might have missed it, is there a number in here that tells me how much we're paying for adult detention totally?
Yeah, we budgeted $3,503,986.11. That's the contract dollars for our state counties. And then the contract that we talked about on that special one is $5.3 million. So that's keeping all of our state contracts as well.
So roughly $9 million.
Total is around $9 million, total incarceration costs.
This is a crazy question, but can you give us an idea of what it would cost us to build our own facility?
We do have a team looking at that.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. I appreciate your answer.
Yes, Mr. No-Fire.
Hey, Marshall Buell, appreciate what you do over there with all of our marshals, and I'm excited to see the work that you put in, putting in and categorizing out all the new positions that you're going to be opening up. That is a big undertaking, so blessings be with you and trying to obtain all those job positions. I know that your bar is set really high to get all those applicants to be qualified to be able to be on with the Marshal Service. So good luck to that, and if you need anything from us in the future trying to help out with that in any means, just let us know. So,
Thank you very much.
all right, appreciate it. Appreciate you.
Are there others? Well, seeing none, oh, yes, I'm sorry. Somehow your hand is blending right into your face when it's right in front of it. I apologize, Ms. T. That's happened 2 or 3 times.
Thank you for joining us this morning, Marshall Buell. It's always a pleasure to see you. I was looking, I also had questions related to the incarceration agreements. In the narrative, it says that, that it ranges from $54 to $56 per day. And the question that I had for you, and this may have, it may have been a question that I should have posed to Dr. Jones, but in that 54 to 56 a day, does that also include any medical costs that may be incurred for that individual? For instance, if a person is incarcerated and requires, say, high blood pressure medications or things like that. So is that part and parcel in that 54 to 56?
That is not, no. We still go through IHS for the normal things for that.
Okay, so whether a person is having a chronic and severe illness, or there's something emergent that's happening, that is on top of the $54 to $56 per day?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, all right, and then it says that the ankle monitors are about $10 per day. So the contracting for that, I assume, is done third party?
Yes.
Okay. All right, well, that is a much less expensive alternative to detention, so hopefully we are able to exercise that when and where appropriate. I believe that concludes the questions that I have for you, but I also echo Counselor No-Fire's, his statement that, we here on the Tribal Council are absolutely dedicated to public safety as well, and to supporting our public safety officers like our marshals. And so when and where items are needed, we are definitely happy to be supportive of those needs. Thank you very much, Chair.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, Mr. Kidwell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Marshall, one quick question. The Tribal Homeland Security Grant, we're in our 3rd year of a 3-year thing. Do you envision that being renewed, or we need to be looking somewhere else for those funds next year?
It is not a renewable grant. It's something that we have to apply for every year, and we're always actively involved with applying for any federal grants we have. So we will be applying for that grant, but it's not guaranteed.
Okay, excellent. I see it's at a $68,000 deficit. Are we just going to pull those from somewhere else, I would imagine, if it's not renewed?
That's just because we're asked for an extension. So
Okay.
that's where that's coming from. No,
All
it's,
right.
it's not that we're going to owe that at the end of the day.
All right, copy. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Shambaugh.
What's it used for?
Mainly it's used for equipment. So most grants do not pay for salaries. So it pays for different types of equipment, like this one, I think, underwater robot to help search for bodies. So most of the grants we get, whether it's FEMA, Homeland Security, or for when you see marshals out there and you see big trucks, or you see like our command post, when you see our communications truck, those, we don't come to council to ask for those. Those, we find grants to buy those big ticket items, like our command post. You know, it's almost a $500,000 vehicle. Well, I don't know how many times I come here and ask for $500,000 for 4 wheels. So most of those grants that we hunt for are equipment grants. Mostly with us, there's not salary grants out there. COPS has a grant that will pay for a couple people. But it's usually a 3 or 5 year grant, and then you have to find money for them at the outside.
All right, thanks, sir.
Anybody else? Seeing none. We appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. I don't think there's anybody else prepared. So we will go ahead and recess for lunch, and we will reconvene at 1 o'clock. Is everybody good with 1? All right, 1 o'clock. Roll call.
Keith Austin,
Here.
Joshua Sam, Danny Callison, Julia Coates,
Here.
Sean Crittenden, Joe Deere, Mike Dobbins, Rex Jordan, Johnny Kidwell, Darrell Legg, Wes Snowfire, Dora Petzkowski, Mike Shambaugh, Melvina Shot Pouch, E.O. Smith, Condesa Teehee, Victoria Vasquez. We have a quorum.
Excellent, thank you. Next up on our schedule is David Moore with Management Resources.
Good afternoon, good to see everybody here. I'm excited to present this budget to you guys. It's not a big change from last year, except this year, where actually the work is going to start. So everything we do with our capital improvements goes, it's straight to the tribe. It's straight to our citizens, so it's real exciting. We've added a couple of new positions because of the need for these projects is huge. So we've added a couple of new positions, and we're in the process of filling some that we've left vacant due to COVID. You know, we didn't really want to hire people right in the middle of COVID and stuff, but we know where we're going now. We've actually got a guy starting today and another one in a couple of weeks. So exciting times. That's all I really have to say is exciting times are ahead for our whole tribe, and it's an honor to be a small part of it. So if you have any questions, I'll try to answer them.
Well, I really appreciate your excitement over those things.
Man,
It's
yeah,
a big task.
I promise y'all.
You-
It's real.
Your department has been given big tasks the last couple of years, and it's been a challenge to keep things on track.
Yes.
So appreciate you a lot, and I know some of these projects have felt like hitting your head against the wall, and yet we make progress.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there questions for David? I think you can consider yourself lucky, David.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Anna, representing Department of Commerce.
Yes, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
You have a copy of my budget request, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Are there questions?
There we go.
All right.
Thank you very
Anna.
much.
Appreciate you. Next, we have Human Services with Jennifer Kirby. Hi, Jennifer.
Hi, good afternoon, council. You have our budgets, if you have any questions.
Yes, Ms. Shop Pouch?
Changed or upped or whatever, remember? I'd have to get back with you on the exact. It was either, I want to say 17, possibly. But I'd have to get back with you on an exact year.
All right, thank you.
Yes, Mr. Legg?
And do we have any idea of when that might be in the talks of increasing? I think for a lot of the council, we've been getting funeral homes that have come to us and some issues, I think even out of Fort Smith, of one that just said, I'll never do another one or something because it, but is there any kind of talk or anything about, or plan to do an increase?
There is, yes. Yes, we're in talks right now, and a plan has been submitted, and that's kind of where we are right now.
I believe you'll find this council to be energetically willing to work with you when you're ready with that one. Yes, Mr. Shambaugh.
Have you budgeted for a possible increase that we might pay funeral homes? They're losing money every time they do one.
Actually, as the treasurer said, it's submitted for the, as instructed, and then if that happens, then we can do a budget modification, since those are available every month.
So no.
No.
Okay. Thank you.
Anybody else? All right, Jennifer. We appreciate all the work you do all year long.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we have government resources. And that would be Ginger Reeves, Derek Van, Ashley Fox, Scott Ottner, Kim Teehee, or any combination thereof.
Good afternoon. It's good to be here.
Good afternoon.
I believe you have a copy of all my budgets. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to address them.
Does anybody have questions for Ginger relating to the real estate's budgets? Seeing none, we appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Derek? With registration.
Good afternoon, council. I'm here to answer any questions you have about the registration budget.
Any questions? Yes, Wes?
Just a comment, you look sharp today.
Thank you, sir.
The vest, the tie, just had to say something, glasses, got
Thank
all
you, sir.
sophisticated on us before you came in, so appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Chair.
I see no questions, Derek.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you for your work. Okay. Please, go ahead and introduce yourself, because I beg the fact that I cannot remember the name.
That's okay, that's okay. Shauna Miles. So
Shauna.
you all have our budget. If you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer those.
Any questions for Shauna? All right, Shauna. Mr. Kidwell.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, Sean, are you here for Ms. Teehee?
Self-governance.
Self-governance?
Yes.
Okay, on the Office of Self-Governance, listed on one of the budgetary items for that section is the new position TBD on number, it's accounting line 2041005.
Okay.
Do you have any idea, what is that position planned to be?
So I believe on that one, if you'll look, also for on my chart, it shows the first new position, TBD, which is the Self-Governance Director, which is myself.
Okay. Yeah, I have, the line number one is new position TBD existing, And then line number 2 is self-governance coordinator, assistant to the chief. That's what those are the two that I'm showing.
So that previous position was Ashley Fox, and Ashley has left us to go to law school. So
Okay, so the position number 1, that is TBD, it's not TBD, it is determined, and that is called what?
self-governance director.
Okay. Thank you.
You're
Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Are there other questions for self-governance? All right, we appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then we show Scott Otten. Scott, to help us all, would you introduce yourself and tell us your department as well?
Sure. My name is Scott Otten. I'm the Director of Evaluation and Compliance.
Okay. So do we have questions for Scott today? I don't believe we do. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
Appreciate you. And then we have Ms. Teehee for Government Relations. Is Kim here today?
Mr. Chair, Government Relations was listed under the Office of Chief Budget this morning. Kim was present virtually at that time. She's not available virtually, but if there's any questions, I'd be happy to take those and work with her on those.
Okay. Does anybody have questions we need to deliver to Ms. Teehee relating to Government Relations? I'm not seeing any.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. We already did Marshal Service, so let's go to Gaming Commission, Ms. Janice Purcell. Is she here yet? We're running real quick all of a sudden here.
Did you already talk to Scott Otten? Yes. Okay. I sent an email or a text to Janice. She should be here in a minute.
Okay.
Before we move to the next one.
I see we've got Todd Gord, so we'll move on to IT. Yes.
You might have Cameron go ahead and get a hold of Jerry Killer and have them go ahead and come up right now.
Yeah, I would very much appreciate looking down the schedule and making sure we've got those folks heading here.
Yeah, most of them have been notified.
Thank you so much.
Well, good afternoon, and thank you for allowing me to present our FY23 budget. I want to just start by saying how proud I am of our team. We have tremendous technology professionals within the Cherokee Nation, both in health and government, and I'll also throw in on the businesses side as well. So just blessed to be with those team members. They've done some tremendous work. We have great plans ahead of us in '23, and just, again, be glad to answer any questions you might have about our budget.
Thank you, Todd. You know, I've repeated many times that one of the things that I was very grateful for is my grandmother always expressed how important it was for us to realize we are Cherokees, but we live in a modern time. And your department is so important for us to actually live in the modern time, for us to actually function well in the world in which we find ourselves. And you guys have taken great strides in a very short period of time to help make sure our people are connected to the government that serves them. Thank you. Are there questions for Todd today? Yes, Ms. Teehee, thank you.
Thank you for joining us this afternoon. It's always great to hear from information technology. My question is in regard to there's a bit of a budgetary increase, and you know, in a year where we're looking at flat budgets, you know, a 14.9% increase. I was going to ask you to speak a little bit to what has kind of motivated that particular increase.
Sure. So as everyone is well aware, there have been significant investments made over the last few years in our nation, infrastructure and technology-wise. And as a result of that, there's a need for both technology professionals and increased licensing costs to maintain and support that. As you are, again, I'm certain aware, Our Gadugi portal has been a tremendous success in outreach to the citizens and providing services. We're budgeting for growth to support that. We're budgeting for technologists so that we can better support that internally, as well as increase the licensing cost as we continue to leverage that. We're also modernizing many of our technologies. We have done so over the last few years, but we continue to do so, strengthening our security posture. The Cherokee Nation, a large entity with several, we're targeted, if you will, from whether that be phishing or whether that be various other types of attacks. So we're investing in our security technologies. We're investing in that modernization to allow our team members to collaborate better, to allow us to work more efficiently, and to better understand the data and information we collect, to use that to be more strategic and predictive.
Okay, wonderful. One of the things that I notice here is court support necessitated by the McGirt decision as part of, I believe, what is also contributing to that budgetary increase, which I am supportive of. I have had constituents reach out to me with concerns because the website where court information can be accessed and checked has kind of been up and down. Is there a plan in FY23 to kind of address that issue, or to have a system that's dedicated specifically to the courts to try and fix that issue?
There are. So both. There are efforts to stabilize existing technologies, but there's also research and collaboration partnership to identify potentially a dedicated solution to that as well. So a new dedicated solution to that as well.
Okay. And vacant positions, is that something that IT is grappling with as well?
It is. And you'll see that we've not only budgeted new positions, but we also have a current number of open positions. We're struggling like every other organization. There are a number of contributors, the workforce shortage. These are skilled professional positions that are very competitive in our market, local market, as well as kind of nationally. And what we're trying to do with that is partner with our HR team. Ms. Hendricks has been great to work with us to be more strategic in our recruiting efforts, looking at our compensation to make certain we're competitive. But then also we're trying to develop programs so that we can kind of build our pipeline internally, so that we can give our internal candidates, our internal workforce, the opportunity to grow their skills and advance within the organization, perhaps into more senior level positions. So we're taking a number of different tactics to try to address that shortage.
Okay, within that recruitment plan, I know at one point there was sort of a coding camp that was being offered at Sequoia High School. Our partnerships with local vocational programs and with local universities, is that something that's being explored as well?
It is. We actually have a number of partners right now that we're working very closely with who want to invest in helping us with those universities and local tech schools, trade schools, to build programs, as well as working internally with career services and other groups to help develop that. So we have several partnerships. The key platform we use for our Gadugi portal, which is called Salesforce, they have been a tremendous partner to us in offering opportunities to use their training program to help develop both internal employees as well as external potential candidate citizens as well.
Okay, are you still also offering work from home options to try and maybe recruit candidates who might not be geographically local, but can actually do the work from where they're at?
We are. Where those opportunities present themselves, it's not every role that we have within IT allows that, but in those opportunities where it does, we are looking at some flexible work location efforts through our current policy to enable those individuals, whether they be local or whether they be a citizen that may reside in, again, make this up, Nebraska. It doesn't matter where they're located. Certain jobs can certainly, with the right controls, work wherever they may be located.
All right, well, that's wonderful to hear, and it's also wonderful to hear the partnership that's happening with Human Resources, because I know in such a competitive, fast-paced environment where, prime candidates get snapped up very quickly, the time to fill position may, you may lose out on some great candidates if that time to fill is too long, so.
Yes, ma'am, it's critical.
Yeah, well, I appreciate your time this afternoon, and thank you for the time, Chair.
Counselor Callison.
Mr. Gord, thank you for coming here today. When you talked about working from home, is that, how do I put this? Is that everybody across the board, or is this only for certain folks? Or you mentioned that policy, and I just wondered if that was, how we done it that way?
Yes, sir. I believe, and again, I will preface this statement with, I believe, I'm not positive, the policy itself, I believe, is a Cherokee Nation policy, which would mean that it could go across the board, but specifically to IT, those jobs, again, that allow themselves to work from home, certain jobs, maybe it's a development job where they're programming, those can be done pretty effectively remotely. And where we need to, where those skill sets are difficult to attract here in Tahlequah, we may have to go external and get those.
Mr. Shambo.
I'll be very quick. There is a significant increase, but I still think this is one of the most important programs we have in the Cherokee Nation, and it is well-deserved. It has allowed us to serve more of our citizens in a more efficient manner that we didn't have before. I mean, look at where we are today as opposed to 2 years ago.
Yes, sir.
And, you guys deserve some kudos for that, because it's, we're able to serve thousands more than it was even possible before. So it is a changing world too, and you guys have stayed on top of it, so we appreciate you.
Yes, sir. Thank you for those comments. We have tremendous leaders within our IT group. Ms. Paula Starr, Mr. Donnie Parrish, both lead respectively government and health. They've done a tremendous job of leading their teams. Their teams are very committed and dedicated to the Cherokee Nation, working long hours, working very hard hours to keep our technologies current, to make investments in the future, and to support the growth that we're blessed to be experiencing. So thank you for that recognition.
Anybody else? Todd, I don't see anything else, so appreciate the work you do. Thank you again.
Thank you all very much.
I don't know if Ms. Purcell has arrived yet, but I do see Diane Kelly is in the room. And unless Ms. Purcell has gotten here, I'm going to go ahead and ask Ms. Kelly if she's ready.
Be glad to, Mr. Chair. You have my report, so are there any questions?
Yes, Mr. Deere.
Thank you.
Hey, Diane. Hey, in the budget, I was looking, Taro charges those fines. Just curious, where does that money go when it's collected?
It goes back into our budget.
It goes back into your budget?
Yeah.
And where's it reflected in here?
It is reflected in our overall budget when we get it for the year.
Okay. And do you know how much that amount was from last year?
No, I do not, but I can get that information for you from last year.
Okay. All right, thank you.
All right. Anything else for Ms. Kelly today?
Thank you, sir.
All right,
Thank you,
Ms.
council
Kelly.
members.
Thank you. Appreciate you. Is Ms. Killer here? Maybe easier, just tell me who is here. Okay, let's go ahead with Sharon with Tax Commission. It's no reflection on anybody. We are ahead of schedule, so thank you all for being flexible.
Good afternoon. I believe you have my budget. The only major changes in my budget are a little difference in personnel. We have added some supervision at each site location, like at Collinsville, Catoosa, things like that. I feel like we've grown so much that was just really needed out there for the staff. So you will see those new positions in there for those supervisors.
Do Do we have questions for Sharon today? Thank you, Sharon. I see none.
Thank you.
We have, I know that Secretary Harsha is here. Do we have Election Commission represented yet?
We do,
Okay.
yes. Election Commission.
Good afternoon. You guys have our budget there. Typical with an election year being a little higher than a non-election year. We anticipate needing some additional workers for like stuffing and folding and that kind of thing for getting ready in between the general and the runoff, and that's about the only thing that's any different from year to year, so.
We do appreciate the dedication of your team.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
We could not do what we do without you guys right there, all of us. So, are there any questions for our Election Commission today? I see none. Thank you, Marcus.
Thank you very much. You guys have a good afternoon.
Secretary Harsha, would you like to come forward?
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of the council. Always appreciate the opportunity to present the budget annually. I believe you have a copy of what I have proposed. You'll also notice that I have 44 separate budgets, which is quite a number, and that's partly a result of the pass-through funding that we receive, EPA grants for environmental programs. Overall, the budget is fairly consistent with last year, with the exception of a substantial increase from funding that we received from the Volkswagen Mitigation Trust, which is supporting our expanded EV infrastructure efforts. As far as, I know the conversation has come up quite a bit today on staffing. As far as my group, we've just closed 3 positions that were open to the public, haven't received the panels yet, but with that, we should be fully staffed. And if there's any specific questions about the budget that I have proposed, I can certainly take those.
Mr. Deere.
I was looking, is the headstone still under you that we passed?
I don't believe so.
Who is that under?
I believe that would, what's that?
Is it under Kevin?
Kevin Stretch, I believe.
Okay, so the second thing in yours and the TIPO is like 1.4. What is that appropriated for?
So under, you're familiar with the TCNS program that used to be much more active than it is today. Under that program, there's money generated for doing Section 106 reviews. Over the past 2 years, there's been some regulatory rulemaking changes that have eliminated the vast majority of that revenue stream. We do have some money that is still available, and we don't generally use it as program income because it's not guaranteed year after year, and it's certainly dwindled over the past 3. But that money has been set aside for special projects down the road related to tribal historic preservation. One example is funding that we did have in that account was used to build the vault in the genealogy center, and so that money is generally not available to spend, but we do hold it, and we do see small increases throughout the year.
So there is some of it that is guidelines to it, what you got to use it for, right?
Correct. I believe that's true.
Okay. And also it said contract services, but it didn't really say like 365,000.
So that could be for a number of different things. Part of what we would use it for would be, our archaeological services, but that number so far this year is like around 60,000. So, we've seen a little bit of increase with the expanded projects, but, we use that to support, just general program items, including consulting services related to archaeological reviews.
Okay. All right, that's all I had. Thanks, Chad.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Callison.
Chad, looking at your wildlife management, I noticed you went from $650,000 down to $300,000. Is that just because we have things in place, or?
So the initial number from last year represented the annual payment that we would have made under the existing compact to the state of Oklahoma, where we paid $2 per license. Now that we don't have a compact, we no longer we no longer have to provide that funding. And so talking through with my staff and looking at our staffing needs, which we have expanded that program quite a bit. The additional money wasn't something that we needed, and felt that maybe the Treasurer's Office could allocate that for other services. But I do believe that the Fish and Wildlife budget that's before you is good for what we need, and also a good starting point for expansion that we anticipate over the next year.
Okay, and with that said, have you had any pushback from citizens not having a state license?
No, I mean, they have, they very much enjoy the expanded privileges that they otherwise didn't have under the compact. I think, there's still some confusion out there as to whether or not a state license is required, but we've published our frequently asked questions, and we've reached out and communicated those changes as far and wide as we can. But for the most part, people seem to be pretty happy with the change.
Ms. Teehee.
Good afternoon, Mr. Harsha. It's good to see you here. I wanted to follow up a little bit on a question that was previously asked. And also I wanted to maybe clarify and really state explicitly. So the state walked away from thousands of dollars from Cherokee Nation by kind of obliterating that compact. Would that be a fair assessment?
I would go a little further and say the state walked away from tens of millions of dollars of compact funding that was available by way of the federal pass-through that it was uniquely, the situation that it created uniquely for federal funds, and then also, $400,000 to $500,000 that we would issue per $2 per license on an annual basis, with that number increasing year after year.
That just boggles my mind, but it does not sound like sound fiscal policy to me. But to go back to our budget, you mentioned that there was, another individual asked about the contracts for archaeological services. And you mentioned that those have not been fully expended at this time, and so I would assume that's based on as needs arise.
Correct, and the archaeological surveys, we can't predict accurately on the beginning of a fiscal year how much we'll need, because it depends in a large part on the Tribal Historic Preservation's Office initial review, based on the databases we have and the information related to our areas of potential effects. And so, when that money is not utilized, it returns back to the budget and carryover. Okay. But we do utilize third-party archaeologists whom we've used for over 20 years that performs that work as needed. And with all of the construction work that we have going all around the nation, I think having a little bit of room in there is probably a good idea in case we have issues arise as we're moving through construction projects.
Okay, and I would assume also that our Tribal Historic Preservation Office is not only responding to needs that arise from our own construction projects, but also whether there's, an ODOT project or something of that nature as well. Is that correct?
Correct. So we respond to every request that is presented to our office. Most of them come by way of a federal nexus. So, example, a federal permit is being issued for a project in areas that we've described as our area of potential effects. I think to date, I don't know if you've had the opportunity to meet Elizabeth Toombs, our Tribal Historic Preservation Officer, but she does a remarkable amount of work, and she also has a staff member that helps support that effort. And I think so far to date, she's done over 3,000 reviews, so she stays really busy, and we review every request that comes across our desk and her desk.
Wonderful. And if I'm not mistaken, that new support position in the Tribal Historic Preservation Office was a new addition in FY22, is that right?
Correct. We added it over the course of this last year to help provide some support to the workload that she moves through.
Okay, so I would assume that due to kind of the variation in nature of those requests made to the Tribal Historic Preservation Office, that it might not be feasible to have a full-time archaeologist on staff, or is that something that has been considered?
Correct, and I mean, the amount of money that we've spent historically annually on archaeological reviews hasn't warranted it. It would be, we don't spend enough on them to bring someone in full-time, because that's not a low-paid position. It's fairly unique. And I think with the abilities that we have currently in our TIPO office, reviewing these on the front end, I think that we are in good shape with the process that we use now.
Okay.
And that's not to say, if there are circumstances that arise, it's not uncommon for Elizabeth or her support staff to go and actually lay eyes on these projects or serve as monitors. But I'm comfortable with the process we have now. It works well, and we're able to keep all the work done and frankly more.
Well, and I would also think that the nature of the request that is made can sometimes necessitate the needs of specialized areas of expertise, even within the field of archaeology itself, which would then mean that you're reaching out to different archaeologists at different time who have different specializations.
Correct. And if there's a project that we've identified as having such an impact that we need to take a deeper look, we do require that archaeologists be retained and that they perform the work under our standards.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you very much for your time and your patience today, Secretary Harsha, and thank you for the time, Chair.
Thank you.
Mr. Smith?
Yes, sir. How are you today?
I'm doing well, sir.
How long is the Volkswagen thing going to last? That's a pretty good deal.
So we've just requested our last round of funding. I think there was 5 rounds total, and so we've drawn down a total of a little over $8 million, I believe, for the totality of each application that we submitted. As far as project planning, we're the only tribe in the country who's actually expended even the first round, which we have, and we've earmarked all the way through to a buffer of about $1 million on projects that we're moving into the procurement phase now. So as of right now, the last and final round of Volkswagen has been dispersed, but it's also my understanding that due to some of the complexities amongst these projects, amongst other tribes, some of that money is likely to be returned back to the trust. And if that does happen, we will most surely make another request for an application.
On this license, it's a little bit off subject, but if you would ask the average Cherokee, they would think that the reason they didn't get a license this year was because Cherokee was trying to save money. I think we need to make a big blitz in the paper or something, tell everybody what actually happened that we wasn't trying to do. But if you ask the average person, they'll say, well, the Cherokee Nation's letting us down, and it's not us. And I think that's the deal. What's a red wolf?
A red wolf is an animal of cultural
How many know on this
significance to the tribe. What?
How's that going?
What is the question?
Red wolf on the project here.
Oh, it is a grant that we have through our cultural ethnobiology program that is working with, I believe it's the Fish and Wildlife Service to put together, it's almost like, I believe, a docuseries for public awareness and public information.
But we don't have any red wolves, right?
We do not.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Technically, you did answer his question.
I did.
Is there other questions? Mr. Callison, one more time.
Mr. Harsha, on down with your wildlife conservation budget that you have here, I know that you did not increase it. Is that with all that's been dumped into your lap with what's happened over the last year? Do you foresee anything happening? I know it got dumped probably after you turned your budget in. Is that?
So, this was, the decrease was a result of conversations that I had with the finance office, right? So whenever we put together our budget, my team goes through and thoughtfully makes a request that we think we need, and don't over ask so that money can be allocated in other places. Prior to last year, the entirety of that money was set aside for, most of it for the compact, and based on the increased staff that we've acquired over the last year and the funding that's available after the cut, I still think that that's plenty for us to get through the fiscal year. And of course, we're going to continue to expand this program, and I don't know what that will speak to in future years. But I'm 100% comfortable with what's been proposed, and that's a result of conversations that we've had with finance.
Thank you.
All right. I see no more questions, Chad. I appreciate the work you did.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Purcell, I see you're here, so we'll jump back and appreciate you getting here a little quicker. We're doing great.
Thank you so much.
On our budget, we're asking for additional funds because we have a couple of new expenses. Those include a new database for licensing, which is an NIGC requirement, and also a new badge pass because the old badge program has gone obsolete. Most of those funds are asking for is for vacancies, which we have due to attrition from COVID, and we are hoping to get those filled. We're getting new panels from HR, and that is the basis of why we are asking for this amount of money.
Are there questions for gaming today? Gaming Commission? Yes, Mike.
What is badge pass?
Badge pass, I'm sorry. It's the badges that everyone wears for gaming. You get a gaming license, and I think we had a meeting with IT, and I believe that the program that other departments that require badges is going obsolete as well.
So that just consists of getting new badges, I guess?
No, it's a machine. We make the badges at the different
Right.
casinos for licensing.
Okay.
So it's, actually, it's a software program that we have to upload into our printer and scanner.
So you're just going to make your own?
Yes.
Okay, all right, thank you.
How many people do you license?
Approximately 3,000.
It's a lot of badges.
Yes, it is.
Anything else? All right, Ms. Purcell, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you.
Next, I believe Jerry Killer is here with the Housing Authority.
Good afternoon. Yes, I'm here. I'm sorry. My apologies.
Oh.
I flew across town, but I didn't break the speed limit. I promise.
Well, you're here a fair amount ahead of your schedule, so we appreciate that.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you give us your highlights?
So the Housing Authority budget is a pass-through budget. It's pretty much the same every year, but in addition, this year we have some of the Housing, Jobs, and Sustainable Communities Act budgets. Those are all in there as well.
Do we have questions for Jerry relating to budget today? Yes, Councilor Deere.
Under 356, 2017, you have in here, there's 12 rental units in Tulsa, Rogers County, just a budget request of $3 million. What kind of unit rentals is that?
They will
Is it
be,
a
they will
single
be.
level or?
Yes, they will be low income, most likely like elder, single-family dwelling type units. But
So we're
they will-
talking 800, 1,100 square feet, or what are we talking?
Undecided at this point, still in the development phase, but most likely 1 and 2 bedroom units.
All right, but do we know, if we're undecided, do we know if 3 million's enough or too much?
That's the grant that we got. That was a grant amount.
That's the total grant money of
Mhm.
that then?
Yes.
Okay. And have they found the area where they want to put that?
We are still looking for the land to purchase.
Okay,
If you know of any, send some my way.
I know
For us
some.
to look at.
I got some. All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilor Legg.
Hey, Jerry. Kind of the same thing. For the 16 new rentals in Sequoia County and Sallisaw, do you know where those are going to be at? Is that over by
Behind the
People-
office?
Okay, right by People Inc. and all that area right there? or
Yes, but they'll be right behind our office.
On that side of the road?
Yes.
I got you. All right, thank you.
You're
When will
welcome.
that start?
Soon as I get them out for bid. We're actually working with the city to get the plat filed with the city.
Okay.
Running into a couple of hiccups there, but as soon as we can get that plat filed, then we'll be ready to bid it out.
Awesome, thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any other questions for Jerry relating to budget today? Yes, Ms. Teehee?
Good afternoon, Ms. Killer. It's good to
afternoon.
see you. I know that the Housing Authority and the Housing Authority staff work extremely hard to meet multiple and varied needs of our citizens and are often called upon in extreme temperatures and at late hours to try and help our citizens. So I really commend you and your staff on the work that you do. I don't really have any concerns with the Housing Authority budget as it stands. My concern is how external factors are impacting the housing authority, such as, I think almost with every single budget line that we're talking about here today, we're talking about vacant positions. And that may not impact the housing authority staff that's in-house, but I have to assume that that's having a major impact on your ability as the housing authority to have contractors. And if you would just kind of speak to those issues.
So we have issues with both areas, both force account, internal crews, and vendors and contractors. We have multiple positions open right now for the housing authority, from everything from a clerk to a carpenter to licensed trades, and we have the hardest time filling them. Our HR department does a lot of recruitment. We are working with Diane Kelly's group with for the construction fairs, the contractor fairs, to try to help not only get more contractors, but also they have a job bank available, so if people are looking for jobs, and we let them know that we have available as well. So it's difficult. We're short in the office staff, we're short inspectors, you name it, I'm probably short as far as actual housing authority employees. But then the actual contractors is another very difficult thing for us. Everything from small contractors just doing one or two things, plumbers, electricians, HVAC contractors, to general contractors to actually build new construction homes and replacement homes. I have a need across the board for everything.
Okay. I know that, in addition, we see material costs going up, and we also see supply chain issues with ordering replacement parts and everything like that. And I know that in a flat budget year, how is the housing authority dealing with that and addressing those issues?
So what we do, we have a very, very good procurement and contracts department. They're constantly hustling, getting prices, getting competitive bids on a lot of things. Some things, of course, are out of our control. Supply chain, windows are minimum 12 weeks out right now. So when I get calls saying they need a new window, okay, I'll get to you in about 4 months, because that's how long it's taking just to get windows in. HVAC parts is another thing. They're becoming almost obsolete in a lot of units that are out there, so then we're looking at replacing entire units, but again, a lot of those are back ordered. So like I said, we have staff who are constantly calling, getting pricing, getting bids, shopping around so that we can get the best price that we can. Because ultimately what happens is when pricing increases for both material, and that means sometimes we're able to serve less people because it's costing more to serve one person. I think some of you who use your budgets see that. Some of you may only be able to help one or two people because, a new HVAC system is running about $13,000 is one of the quotes we got recently. They're not all that high, but they're running $7,000, $8,000, $9,000 to replace an HVAC system. So it's tough.
Yeah.
The world's tough right now.
It sounds like you and your staff are under a lot of pressure.
100%.
And so it's even more meaningful that you and your staff are able to meet the needs that you are, and that you are so responsive. You are another individual who always answers your phone, and I appreciate that so very, very, very much. Recently, in my own personal life, I was given an estimate on a new roof that was good for 24 hours. And that's due to just fluctuating costs. So I just cannot imagine, that's me dealing with one issue, and you and your staff are dealing with hundreds, if not thousands, of those exact similar type issues being impacted by variations in prices on lumber, shingles, and everything else.
Yes, ma'am. Lumber yards will hold pricing for us for about 48 hours right now.
Wow. Wow. Well, I really appreciate the work that you and your
Thank you.
staff do.
Thank you.
And the responsiveness from both you and your staff.
Thank
And I almost want to give you a round of applause. So
Well, it goes to the staff, so thank you.
really appreciate the Housing Authority of the Cherokee Nation. Thank you for the time, Chair.
Councilor Vasquez. Yes, thank you. Hi, Jerry, and I too thank you for your always responding to my phone calls. I have a little bit of confusion about the Buffington Heights conversion of 61 bedroom low rent units to 3-bedroom. I thought we only had 51 apartments.
No, so at Buffington, we have 60 apartments total. 2 of those are 2-bedroom, and then 58 of those are 1-bedrooms. So what we are looking at doing is converting some of those 1-bedrooms into larger family units.
Okay, the other question I would have would be, while that's happening, what happens to the existing renters? Is it just remodel while they're there?
Yes.
Okay.
We'll either be remodel while they're there, or we will remodel as they become vacant. We have some plans in the Veneta area to build some elder units by the clinic. And so I anticipate that possibly some of our renters at Buffington will want to transfer over there, possibly, which would free up some space for us to go ahead and renovate and get some more family units.
All right, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank
Mr. Sambo. A little earlier, I heard you mention contractors. Obviously, we want tarot contractors first.
Yes.
Then after that, I mean, is that it? Is there any?
It's fair game.
Okay.
It's
But
anybody.
are you saying we can't find non-Indian-owned businesses who will do the work?
We've, with the contractor fairs that have been happening, we've been making some contacts with some, and we're slowly starting to see the fruits of that. But we occasionally have a hard time even getting non-tarot contractors to bid on anything, because they kind of always been under the impression that they would never win anything, or they would never get awarded, because they weren't tarot. But we're trying to get rid of that stigma and just we need people to work. Of course, tarot is our preference,
All right.
but we just need people to work.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Sorry I got off topic, but, sorry.
Sean?
Well, Mike, that's almost exactly my question. And thank you, by the way, for always taking care of us. In a good mood always, too.
I try to
I
be.
mean that friendly sounding voice on the other end. Now, tarot, like when we're looking for windows, we're looking at whoever can get us windows now, right? Not just tarot vendors.
Right.
Okay.
For anything. I mean, tarot's always our preference.
Right.
But we will look for anybody to get us windows. I'll look for anybody to put a roof on. I'll
Right.
look for anybody to replace the HVAC system. I'll look for anybody to build a house, build a whole house.
All right.
Having trouble with that.
You're a good woman. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Callison?
Jerry, thank you. I noticed on one of your deals, you have like over $6 million for 39 new homes. Is there an idea of where they're at, or are they just across the nation? Or are they for people that's waiting in order for a home, or what is that about?
That was a competitive grant that we applied for and won, and those will go in Cherokee County and in Collinsville. They will be for new construction applicants without land. I should specify that too. Thank you. You're welcome.
Mr. Sam first.
I was looking at the Stillwell office construction budget. Is that on land we currently own around?
Yes.
Okay. And also, I was trying to go through there. Do we have any plans for any increased rental units in Stillwell?
Yes,
Okay.
we do.
All right. Thank you.
Those should be under construction very soon.
Mr. Crittenden, are these budgetary questions?
Well,
She will be
That
back
comes
in
easy.
front of us, you know.
all right, but good question, Josh. Yeah, so the house I grew up in, we call it an Indian home. I guess they still call them that sometimes.
Sometimes.
But I remember my dad going and putting in hours building trusses. And has there ever been any conversations? I don't know the ins and outs, and I'm not expert on that or anything. Any conversations about ever doing that again to kind of help with some of that, or not?
No, we haven't had any conversations about that recently. Community Services tried that a few years ago. They did some self-help housing a few years
I
ago.
remember that.
And we're still cleaning some of that up.
I know, yeah, I know.
I
know,
think you're aware.
But in my area, there's lots of examples where it did work.
It did, yeah, it wasn't a complete failure by any means. It did work in a lot of areas, and a lot of people got some great homes through those programs.
Right. I'm not taking away from what you're doing, because like I said, you're great, and if everything's going good, we just can't help the contractor and the supply thing, but, you know, housing, we all brainstorm. You know, I'm picturing a little carpenter school where we teach some youngins to swing a hammer and tape measure, and, you know, just brainstorming like you do every day. And I hate to say it so much, but you do great work, but I think we're going to get through it.
I believe we are.
Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Cheers.
Mike?
I'll be real quick. Do we have anything in our budget or that may consider, I don't know if this is something to consider, mobile homes?
Yes, I'm in talks on something along those lines.
Because,
Yes,
you
sir.
know, there's a big issue with people living in horrible conditions, and they would probably love to have a mobile home. A new
Yes.
mobile home, the way they build them now are very good, and
Oh, yes.
it may be something that people may be interested in, and it might be a quicker fix, maybe, so.
Yes, yes.
All right. Well, please keep us informed about that.
Absolutely, will do.
All right, thank you.
Ms. Teague?
Well, I really appreciate Speaker Shambaugh asking that question, because we do have some very elderly elders who might not be able to spend the time that the waiting list necessitates, even with being made a priority because they're elderly and disabled or you know. So I was wondering about that mobile home question. How does the mobile home compare to, I'm not sure quite how to phrase this, but the ready-made homes that can kind of be moved in, what's kind of the comparison on those? Yeah.
So, a couple of things that we're looking at, you know, mobile home is one route that we're looking at. We've in the past experimented with a contractor who was able to build a modular type home in his shop, and then we were able to get those out and then put them on runners at the site. We're also looking into something along those lines as well, to be able to quote-unquote mass produce some housing a little more quicker than what we're able to do the stick-builts. The quality of the mobiles today is a whole lot better than the quality of a mobile was 30 years ago. They do last a little bit longer. One issue I think that we've had in the past with mobiles, but I'm working on a solution for this, are handicap accessibility. You know, mobiles are not handicap accessible. So we're working with a manufacturer right now to be able to get that. And I think once we can get that locked down, we might be able to provide that to even more elders who are needing that quicker housing.
Well, it's great to hear that creative solutions are being considered, but in a way that meets the needs of our citizens.
Absolutely.
And that does so in a safe and sustaining way for at least, you know, a foreseeable future. So I appreciate that. Thank you very much for the second round of time, Chair.
I see no more hands.
Okay. Thank you all very
We
much.
appreciate your
Thank you.
willingness to answer all of our questions today. We look forward to seeing you in a few weeks.
Thank you.
Next, we have language. If anybody does anybody need a break right now? Okay, let's take a quick break.
I think that I pushed the right button. Of course, the language department is very excited about everything that's going on in language, and so we've been so supported. It's been by far our best budget this time, and so we're excited about that. Partially it's because of, we've got a new building that we're gonna need some new things like a school nurse, a SRO officer, and space costs and that sort of thing. But this is a good time to be working on the Cherokee language. If you guys have any questions, I'll be more than happy to try to answer them. And for some reason, I don't have the answer, I'll get back with you.
Does anybody have questions for Howard today? Yes, Mr. Crittenden.
Just thank you for what you're doing in language. And that, thank you for that old-time Cherokee speaker services. That's, I'll speak for this chair right here. That's helping lots of folks.
It
So
is,
thank
isn't
you.
it? Well done.
Is there anybody else? Well, it is really refreshing to see the commitment being made to make sure that our language is not a historical language, but a living language.
You know, that's true. I tell you, when I go across the country and people see what's happening with the Cherokee Nation right now, a lot of them, the Hawaiians and different people that has had revivals or a period of renaissance in their language, they tell us that it reminds them of that time. And so that means something good to me because I see what they have done. They've been able to revitalize their language. And so I appreciate every member of this council and all that you guys are doing for language revitalization. Ijaya Legacy in the God.
Thank you so much. I just want to make a quick announcement. I see Lisa Pivick is out there, and I realize that our book does say public health, but our printed schedule does not. We're going to include public health right after Cherokee Publications with Tyler Thomas.
OCO. So y'all have our budget right there. It's pretty, there's a little bit of an increase, but that's mainly due to staffing and adding some travel back to it. So with that said, I'll entertain any questions.
Are there any questions for Tyler today? All right, Tyler.
All right, thank y'all.
Lisa Pivick, Public Health.
Here I am. I made it. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
You will see the Division of Public Health. This is a new budget. I've never actually presented a budget to you in this way, but I am today. I'm happy to answer any of the questions. You'll see that roughly half of that budget is part of the Public Health and Wellness Fund. That is allotted to do the work in communities on recreation centers, substance abuse facilities. There is also an infusion from ARPA, which are dollars from Title 11, and if you'll look, that's for public health workforce and infrastructure. I'm not sure, I don't think that has a date of when we have to have it spent by, so we're working on what we're going to utilize those funds for, but other than that, I'm open to any questions you might have on the budget.
Do we have questions for Lisa today? You did really good, Lisa.
Thank you. It's first time luck, huh? I'm going to get out of here before someone thinks it was. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. We appreciate you a lot and the work that you do. That brings us to Jody Reese, Office of the Tribal Council.
Good afternoon. We're going to tell you the changes we made to the sports team and livestock were carried forward in the 23 budgets. And the two main increases in our general fund and IDCs are legal services contract and the raises that were outlined by the Citizens Compensation Committee is the driving force for the increases in our budgets.
Do you have questions for Jody today relating to the council's budget? Yes, Mr. Callison.
On Ms. Taylor's report, it's got 8.3 new people, or new what?
That was a typo out of the, on the, in their spreadsheet. That's actually, you'll notice that's 8.3 on the courts below it there too, so.
So,
There's 17 council members and 4 staff, and that's where we're staying at.
oh, okay, thank you. Sorry.
That's a rate, that's, yeah, well, I want to see that
That was not my
guy.
way of getting a quadrupled raise or anything, so.
Well, I'm not seeing any hands in the air, so I'm happy to say that you can go back to
Okay.
getting ready for
And
next year's budget.
And I
How's
do
that?
want to thank the finance staff and for their work and help getting the information to me and being available for questions when I run across things. And also, I've called several of the department budget people during the process too, asking questions, and they've all been real helpful. So I want to thank all those.
Well, thank you, Jody.
Thank you.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our agenda for the day. And we have, the question has been entered and seconded. All in favor? Any opposed? I think that deserves a round of applause. You know, I don't think it's insignificant that today is September 6th, and I keep looking at the Cherokee seal in front of me today, and it is dated September 6th, 183 years ago. That was the day this great experiment of the Cherokee Nation as a self-governing under a constitution started. And today was a great sign that our government is robust. It's ready to meet the future. And I believe the 7 generations ago who signed that Constitution would be glad to see the work that we did today. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes this meeting with one more motion. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Now, would everybody